Ladies and gentlemen, how is everyone doing on this fine night? Please ignore the black earbud. I'm working on it. All right, I'm still waiting for that thing to get delivered that will allow us to use both of my earbuds with my normal earbuds. But this side of the normal ones doesn't work very well, and it was annoying having it reach all the way over here. So we have different earbuds for the day. But how is everyone doing? We have a bit of a fun situation going on today that you guys probably don't know about. But we are multi-streaming. We're going on Twitch and YouTube at the same time, and I'm keeping a very close eye on how it's going. So far, YouTube says excellent, and Twitch looks like it says excellent as well in terms of quality. So hopefully this works out. Hopefully we can continue to do this, because I think this could be some good fun. But Jesus Christ, I just moved my desk. What in the fuck? Okay, pro tip. Don't move your desk by pushing on it. Anyways, today not today. Yesterday, or the day before, there was a couple panels on the trans genocide. If you guys remember, we were talking about this a lot, a couple weeks ago, I want to say, about how Polly had an issue with Will putting this together. Well, Will put one together anyways. From what I can tell, I think it's all trans people and Will on this panel, which is definitely interesting. We'll have to see how it goes. See if Polly's worries were unfounded or whether they were kind of all right. So, let me just get this set up real quick, and then we will get to it. Is this the right scene? That is the right scene.
No, don't be totally fine.
I've been having intermittent power issues here because Winston.
We just gotta skip to where it is because I didn't want to
for a couple of weeks, maybe longer
fuck
than
up
that.
and pre-watch.
But I think it is an important discussion to have, and I didn't see any kind of discourse, in my opinion, that was taking place on this that was serious. There was some serious discourse taking place, but I think that it was time that we gathered.
I feel like there was not really any serious discourse. Not gonna lie.
A nuanced and really beneficial way. I have an opening prepared that I want to read, and then I'm going to have each of you
Transfer culture panel V2. True.
And then I'm going to ask the first question. I've already kind of instructed. This is for the chatters. I've already instructed all the panelists basically on the rules of the panel. Basically, we're trying to do 2-minute openers for each question.
Oh, they're doing actual rules. I mean, it's probably good for it, but
make sure that
I wasn't ready for an actual rules panel, especially from Will.
This opener that I'm going to read is something that everybody on the panel agrees with, and I kind of want this to be the anchor framework that we're going to have the rest of our discussion about. So, everyone here on this panel agrees. The trans people face systemic discrimination all over the world. In America, face discrimination all over the world. In America, there are currently several efforts to effectively limit the ability for trans people to receive the health care that they need in two of the largest states in our union, Florida and Texas. Trans people suffer from an abnormally high suicide rate. And the most effective ways...
Y'all, apparently I did not save my game at the end of last stream. That pisses me off. That pisses me off a lot. We're gonna start a new game because I'm just mad that I didn't save all my progress from last stream. Anyways, let's continue.
Is to both make a larger effort to integrate and destigmatize trans people, as well as ensure that they have access to gender-affirming care, if they so wish to receive it. It follows that making it harder for trans people to get the care that they need will potentially lead to an increase in the amount of trans people dying due to suicide. The first question that I want to ask, and just feel free and introduce yourselves. And remember, try to keep it to around 2 minutes, okay? I'm going to shut people down if they go too long. Is there a trans genocide?
Is he cutting out?
Yes,
Hold up, YouTube is telling me this shit's fucked up.
If no,
That's why I'm not
what would have to
paying
happen
attention to the game right now.
genocide?
Give me a sec, guys.
And we're going to start with Johnny Scarlett.
Hi, what's up? If you've never seen me before, my name is Johnny Scarlett. You can find me on twitch.tv/Johnny Scarlett. I'm an educational channel.
Right,
my answer
continue.
to this is that while trans people do face a high amount of violence and excommunication from their communities, we are not an entirely genocidable group. because we will continue to be born into future
You got
generations.
40 minutes to kill. You want me to entertain you? I mean, that's what I'm doing here already, is it not? I feel like that's what I do here all of the time. I want to check that your chats are actually showing up on stream. Fuck, where's my stream? They are fire. We're using a new chat widget because I'm trying to stream on YouTube and Twitch at the same time to see how it goes. So, chats are showing up solid. If there's anyone in YouTube chat, it should also show up. Playing your damn game and listening to basement losers talking about shit they're nowhere near qualified to talk about. I mean, they're semi-qualified. It depends on what you would consider to be qualified. But, you tuned in here. This is your entertainment. After this, we have another thing planned. What are your qualifications to consider someone qualified, Rye, for this conversation? For like the fucking trans genocide bullshit conversation? Like, at what point is someone able to talk about that? What do you have to be qualified in? Because I feel like someone in a medical background, well, they're not talking about medicine though. That's the thing. They're talking about social and political influences. They're not talking about like medical decisions. That's the thing, is that it's not about like, do trans people, it's not any of the do trans people exist or anything. It's just is this a trans genocide happening? Anyone a human rights lawyer worked with the UN? I know at least one of them is a member of activist groups on the left. And activist groups on the left generally do talk about human rights stuff. But either way, I think every single person on this panel except Will is trans, which means we're just gonna let them talk and we will criticize them. But they're gonna talk. I don't give a fuck if they're qualified. A new hip term, trans genocide. I mean, yeah, that's pretty accurate there.
The actual definition that I think meets this a little bit better is cultural genocide, at least for the current
Had you in the first half?
I think that in that vein, we have a real responsibility to document our struggles, document our normal lives and our happiness, and know that other people will see that and will eventually swing to the side of, okay, these are just normal people. They just happen to have a different gender expression than us. That's pretty much my answer. I think
also,
that cultural genocide is being attempted.
The camera is at eye
However,
level now.
I don't know that
how
it's
I feel
been
about it. It's really weirding me out.
I don't know that it will be entirely successful.
It was the best spot for it with the new setup sort of thing I have going on my desk.
Let's have Alexander go now.
You don't mind it being called that because there's a consolidated effort institutionally not only to curb civil rights but actively persecute the trans community? I wouldn't. Okay, so there are worrisome laws being proposed. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's curbing civil rights or persecuting the community, because at large, even if it's a shitty thing, children don't have all that many civil rights aside from what their parents give them. So things like saying you can't medically transition until you're 18, I wouldn't consider that a violation of civil rights. I mean, a registry has always existed of people who are trans. That's the thing, is that this registry has always existed because it's a medical condition. Nobody really transitions before 18. It depends on what type of transition we're talking about. Social transition, quite a few people do. And puberty blockers, and in some states, hormones. Like I know in my state, hormones at 16 are decently popular. But I don't know. It all depends on what you would consider to be that transition. Gender affirmative care is not transitioning. So what's transitioning to you? And there's multiple types of transition. That's what I'm talking about. There's social transition and there's medical transition. And there's also different stages to a medical transition. So nothing happens overnight, which is why I don't say, oh, they're transitioning or they're not. It's a matter of what stage are they getting to under 18.
Muted.
Shit, I'm muted. Okay, so sorry, I forget. I always put it on push to talk so that I can make snide comments to my chat. Sorry, I'm joking. No, so I'm Luxander. You can find me at luxander.net. I I stream on YouTube, but that's my website. I believe that we are experiencing what you would describe as a genocide. I typically appeal to the UN definition because I actually think that that's a fairly conservative.
Gender affirmative care is it's about therapy and clinical treatment of gender dysphoria. It's not gender reassignment. Okay, but it's talked of as the same thing, and it's practically the same. It's in the same category, right? You need therapy in most places, at least under 18, to get any sort of medical help, you know, like medical transition help. And that medical transition is just that. It is a medical transition. There's a social transition and a medical transition that people undergo. Point is, I don't think it's genocide, but if it gets eyeballs on the active persecution of trans people, then I don't mind the shock value. I think it's a bit of a boy who cried wolf situation. TBH.
Conservative definition, but if you look at a number of different definitions, like beyond that, you could like most certainly if you expand beyond the UN, yes, for sure.
My back is like flat against my chair right now.
I just had it pulled up on my computer here. The 10 stages of genocide. I think we are. So we're certainly at the point where property is being expropriated. I think, in the sense that it's not necessarily uncommon to see stories of like trans people having their bank accounts frozen because they don't sound like the correct gender over the phone. We saw the same thing happening to the finances of.
So I've gone through on stream already, like the stages of genocide that, for example, Polly likes to spew. And we don't fit practically any of it in a way that, or like we as a country don't fit that definition of being in that stage of anything. Unless we're going to consider that there's an active, an active genocide on black people and gay people and trans people and all of these people. And if you can consider an active genocide on a political orientation, like basically what I'm saying is there's nothing all that special. The idea of a registry, I mean, you're just keeping track of who gets medical things, which already happens. You can look at COVID and see that that already happens. It's seeing very worrying signs. It should be stopped in this track. Yeah, I mean, there's worrying things happening. No one's denying that there's, well, okay. I'm not denying that there's worrying things happening. But what I am denying is this idea that it's a genocide. Thank you for the applause, BestJ. To politically marginalize trans people by stereotyping them as groomer. How am I a scammer? What did I scam, bro? Stereotyping them as groomers. So, first of all, it kind of depends who you're talking to and how they define that. Because I know, like, Ben Shapiro calls trans people groomers, but he calls everyone on the left practically groomers. And he says that because it's political grooming in what he says. So, I mean, there is political grooming in a lot of cases. Talking about legislation. What legislation actively calls trans people groomers? Proposals. I'm agreeing with you that there currently are proposals that are worrying, but there's not active legislation on these things that is particularly worrying, at least to me.
Of Jewish people, pre World War II, I think it was. So yeah, like I think it's fair to say that we're right around stage 7, where like, or perhaps stage 8, just depending on where you're looking at. You know, Texas recently tried to request information from their Department of Revenue about gender changes on driver's licenses, like, and it was discussed during the Florida recent change to the way that they approach this for youth, where they wanted to curate lists of trans people in both of these occasions. And I think that that's a very clear indication that we're quite deep in this process, according to the Holocaust.
Yes. Okay, fuck you. Send me something that's not... Oh, wait. It can just be a free account? Okay, hold up. Are we off of this page? You guys are not seeing my email. Fuck you guys. Come on. Oh. Make me check a fucking... Okay, thank you for the NPR one. I don't want to go through a whole, like, email verification thing. You don't want me to look at it? I'm just flexing? I mean, I can disagree with a lot of your citations still. Again, I've already addressed trans youth. Great. There's an trans bill tracker library, but it's not working at ATM. It's not working ATM at the moment. So we didn't post that. Okay. Youth, again, don't give a fuck. Single-sex facility restrictions. I mean, in some cases, this is valid, depending on the characterization of them. Athletics, again, iffy, but I can see both sides of it. Others, I don't know what this entails. National Socialist checking in. Greetings. Well, I mean, because you're new, I was gonna ask where you're from and what are your general political views, but I guess now I just gotta sit on where are you from. Also, you guys couldn't see the screen. I'm sorry. I was trying to show that as I was scrolling through it, but apparently I forgot to do that. Anyways. Religious exemptions are good. There should be religious exemptions for practically everything. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is a lot of the things that are characterized as anti-trans bills are overblown. Trans people is a moral panic issue? Yeah, but every single group is used as a moral panic issue. I hate to break it to you, but every single group is and has been. New York, solid. City or state?
Today, Holocaust Day Memorial Trust, that's typically what I appeal to, is the 10 stages of genocide outlined by Gregory H. Stanton, and I will stop there.
Excellent. Power bottom politics.
Yeah, I'm Power bottom politics. He, him. I go by Oliver. So probably that.
Solid fucking name, bro.
Mouthful of a name.
Thank you for the prime subscribe.
Happening in America right now. I think it's always possible for any minority to be genocided at some point in the future, and I will.
All those situations versus your feels. I mean, I just went through the categories. I'm not going to read every single one right now, obviously. But I just went through the categories of the NPR one that you sent me and described that 3 of those categories I wouldn't even consider necessarily persecution. And the other ones were very broad and didn't actually describe what they were. So can't really go into that.
Absolutely agree that trans people should be bracing themselves for a rise in hate crimes. However, I think this trans genocide discourse is a perfect example of people trying to eradicate nuance for the sake of ineffective, divisive, and emotionally manipulative language that really does nothing but cause inflammatory discourse and waste time, and offer some people the opportunity to sit in complacency and do nothing about it, as it A, instills a strong sense of hopelessness, and B, externalizes any responsibility we may have as trans people by making us look like victims that can only be freed of oppression in the if the rest of society acts on our behalf. In order for me to believe that there would be a trans genocide happening, I think I would need to see a...
Do you know how many random ass bills get brought up? I am pretty sure all 300 have not passed. I could be wrong there. But do you know how many bills are brought up? And also, a lot of these are targeting trans youth in terms of transitioning and such, which is a very different story from overall civil rights of trans people.
More streamlined anti-trans narrative. I think right now we have... too much of a mixture of like some progressive-ish people that might be gender critical or whatever they call them. And I think I would need to see more polarization as well. So you're either with trans people or you're against them, and that's it. There would not be any room for nuance or anything whatsoever. Those are 2 things that I would need to see in order for me to consider us closer to a genocide.
All right. And let's go with Rose Malay.
Hey, so first of all, I just Googled the word genocide, and the first thing that came up was the deliberate killing of a large group of people from a particular nation or ethnic group with the aim of destroying that nation or group. Obviously, there's going to be some people who argue that it's in the steps or in the phases, but even if that were true, I think it's bad optically, but I'll get to that. First of all, I think that if you are trying to say that a genocide is happening, that would imply that the Republicans or whoever the transphobic bigots of the society are trying to murder us. And I believe that even if Nick Fuentes or the most extreme alt-right person...
Exactly right. That's what I'm saying, is that it's not a genocide, and calling it a genocide, 1, is a boy who cried wolf situation, and 2, demeans actual fucking genocides happening. I'm not saying that there's no problem. I'm saying that it's not a genocide. Shit, I minimized the tab. I lost it. Fuck. Okay.
like anyone gets power, they're not going to want to lock us in camps and murder us all. Like obviously they're trying to take our rights away. These transphobic bills are absolutely a terrible thing that's happening. But I feel like when you use the term genocide to describe what's going on, you're losing touch with reality. And like I said, you're going to take any random normie, any random person on the street, and when they hear you say that, they're just going to ignore everything else you're saying.
Right. I just think that accuracy of language is incredibly important.
Things going on. There's real.
That's how we understand each other.
It's a big problem.
And tearing down accuracy of language is idiotic.
That's what I worry about when it comes to this. And please don't get me wrong. If there was a real genocide, I would be the first person to be against it. I'd be the first person to advocate for it. Because if there was a genocide, then I'd be going in there too. And I don't want that. I just don't think that is a thing that's happening. And if you can convince me that it is, then that's great. I just personally don't think so.
All right. Let's go with. Do you prefer to go by Brother Malcolm or Sergeant Peppers or?
Goddammit, Malcolm is all of my social media. I just like to confuse people.
Your turn.
Right, lying
Wonderful.
to make
I'm
people
Goddammit, Malcolm.
side with you on a subject. I don't think makes you
stuff from
in
like
the
a
right.
masculine perspective because there's like 3 of us, so I try and capitalize on that and use my minority oppression points to capitalize on that market. I think as far as transgenocide is concerned, I think that it's a little bit more like muddy than a yes or no answer to a question. I think that there are certain criteria of the 10 stages of genocide that are applicable in certain states, and I think that there are some that are not necessarily in chronological order. Like for example, if I'm looking at this list, I don't think that we really hit the idea of symbolization because like, yeah, we kind of identify.
Yeah, you don't need to call it a genocide to get people talking about it, though. People have been talking about it long before this genocide idea even came up.
Ourselves with, trans symbolism, but I don't think that the government is like, hey, we're going to stamp, a little trans flag on your passport, so, we know that you're trans. I guess you could argue
I can get that one later. I just want to say we'll talk about that later.
Shut the fuck up.
Don't
interrupt. The only thing that I can think of that can be like comparable to that would be like an X on a gender marker, like a passport or anything like that, but that's opt-in, so I think that gets a little bit hairy. I think overall there's probably like 5 out of 10 that I would accept that would be classified as happening, but only in certain states. I'm pretty careful when I use the term genocide because it is really Holocaust-esque and it invokes like a certain
the
level
Holocaust
of severity
isn't
and
the
seriousness
only
that I don't think that we've quite approached
genocide.
yet, but I think that if unchecked, we will rapidly approach and probably approach and cross that threshold a lot sooner than we think. And that's it.
Nice. And last but not least, Sonia.
Hello. So I think that it could.
No, but like calling it a genocide when it doesn't fit the definition of genocide is, in my mind at least, making things up to try to get people to believe you.
Be argued that there is a genocide going on in certain states. There are enough qualifiers to say that, and in certain red states in particular, as well as in England. But overall, I would say it's something that there's still you could split a lot of hairs on it, and there isn't enough information to really put it in a definitive, it is a genocide in a way that would be convincing to a large number of people. And one of the problems that I find with this discourse that's currently going on is it is effectively trying to hinge everything on the semantics of whether or not we should use one particular word to describe what's going on with us. And it's being used or utilized or weaponized as sort of like a political foil to say who is a good person and who is a bad person. If you agree that it's a genocide, you're a good person. If you don't agree that it's a genocide, you're a bad person. And the problem with that is as Malcolm stated, it's lacking in any kind of and Rose stated, it's lacking in any kind of nuance, and it is creating this sort of unnecessary division.
That's why I have the stance on this that I do, is that semantics, in the long run, are pretty fucking important. And again, I wouldn't say human rights violations in many of these cases. There might be a couple where it could be considered that, but in many of these cases, it's not.
Agree that this is a genocide that's going on, do agree that all of these conditions that we're facing are extremely atrocious and need to be addressed immediately. So it doesn't mean anything about whether or not your views are correct if you disagree with the word genocide to describe this. And so that's sort of the position I'm taking, is that really it doesn't matter what we call it. What matters is whether or not we can call out these individual issues that we're facing and get attention on them and focus addressing those issues. And I'd like to also remind everybody here that there's none of us here have the ability to authoritatively state correctly that it is a genocide. Like there's no way for us to effectively do that authoritatively. It's all layperson versus layperson here. So everybody here has just as much authority as the other person. And so that's why I think it's really important to focus on the issues and not sit there and try to decide, okay, are we using the correct word to describe this situation?
Yeah, fair point. Bye, Zonia.
Will, you're muted, Ben.
Sorry about that. Hey, Denying, do you have your answers to the questions open?
And I guess I could run through it if you want me to.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna have Denying chime in here too. So Denying is kind of like my co-moderator. But I'm kind of curious what his take is on it, because he does a lot of research on genocide. He has I mean, I don't actually need to describe your title. Why don't you just say it for us?
Hi, I go by Denying History. You guys can call me Brennan or Denying, either one shorthand for you guys. I do a lot of like research into mostly genocide denial or forms of negationism of genocides.
Why is he quieter than the rest
My
of them?
background
It's
is I
gonna
have a
piss me
PhD,
off,
for
bro.
example, in East European history, so I did a little bit of research into the Holocaust and other genocides, like the Holodomor that existed in that period. But like, kind of, I guess to answer the question is a lot of whether or not something is genocide or is not genocide depends on whether or not you're employing a legal or a sociological definition. For example, it has its origins with
I don't know if you guys can hear my dog drinking right now, but she's loud as fuck. I'm sorry if you can.
And then also from then on, it became the legal definition that exists now in 48 with the UN definition. And
here's the thing, Rye. That whole argument over it wouldn't even be a thing if people would stop calling it a genocide. And that's the crazy thing.
And then we now see sociological definitions that have been proposed, ranging from anywhere between genocide means total killing of everyone of a specific social group or social category as membership is defined, or it could be anything from, say, biological destruction through preventing births.
Yeah, that bank. I've never heard this one.
Of groups. So we should probably be like,
I want to know about this.
Focusing on coming to some like agreement in terms of like what type of genocide is going on first, and come to consensus on that type of rhetoric before like we'd say if there is or is not a trans genocide.
Lay down.
Lux, I think you should start us off here. And let's try to avoid a dog pile, because I think Lux might technically be the most solid person here that thinks that there is a genocide going on.
After Lux goes, can I go? Because I want to dogpile against my own team.
Absolutely, sure.
Sweet.
Don't worry, Lux. If everyone
also, for anyone who doesn't know who Malcolm is cool.
I'm glad that's how it works.
I watch Malcolm
okay, so
every
you
once
just
in a
want me to
while.
lay out my case?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Person at the bottom,
my case on
Zonia.
this
Yeah,
basically
Zonia
is that-
generally is.
So
Zonia is on the bottom. We're watching this through her stream because whatever. Malcolm is this guy in the very middle. He's also pretty cool. Max is the guy who put this together. He's the middle right. The other ones, I don't know. What up, Panda? How's your night going?
I think that it's really important to acknowledge that, like, you know, for example, as Denying just said, like, there are some people who define genocide as like the total and complete eradication of a group. If that's our definition, no one has ever even attempted no one has successfully done that. Like, I don't think. Maybe you could consider the destruction of the Neanderthals like a genocide, because we managed to successfully get all of them out of here except in this.
It's not about success. That's not necessarily what it is. Energy, shut up.
In the case of like a sort of interbreeding with them. So I think that's a really high bar. And so I think, again, I usually appeal to the UN definition. It's fairly conservative definition.
Exactly right.
And it includes specific language about attempts to reduce membership of the group. Like
that was her stream. Oh no, that was
just
Best
because
J.
we are spontaneously emergent in the sense that gay people and trans people, like you know, there's not an identifiable genetic component to it or whatever. Like, we're going to continue to happen in the world. Like, still attempts to reduce numbers in the group. If you know that mental health outcomes are better when you allow people to have medical care, then and you tried on purpose to restrict that, including adults. Like, I don't know if anybody has been paying attention to this week. Pre-filings have been happening all over the country, where up to the age of 21, up to the age of 26, like there are limitations on the rights of adults
such thing
to
as a stupid question.
gender
That was a
care.
stupid question.
And I think even if you just looking at the fact of how that shit happens. Sorry, I'm gonna curse sometimes. It's just casual, part of my language. If you just look at that, those are materially things that are attempting to restrict numbers in the group. And some people will say, well, you need to have intent. Okay, you need, like, in order for there to be a genocide, there needs to be an intent. Well, I think that's pretty easy to demonstrate as well, because if you explicitly have the position that, like, oh, we should watch and wait with these teenagers, because if they
just
get to the age of 18, if we just have them go through puberty, maybe this is just a phase, maybe it will resolve, maybe they will just be cis. You're kind of explicitly stating that your goal is for that person to not be trans. And if that's your policy position, then your goal is for fewer people to be trans. And I think that that is it's an exterminationist position at the very minimum. I understand that people have like their definitional quibbles about the word genocide specifically. Like, it is exterminationist policies. They are deliberately trying to reduce the number of people existing within the groups. And I guess I just want to really quick, because goddamn it, Malcolm mentioned it. Like, I'm able to.
I wouldn't necessarily call it exterminist. Okay, that again, this is just from the implications that the word has. But based on those implications, I wouldn't call it that. Speaking of bananas, did I make it to your private story? Oh, I forgot to add you to my private. I can add you to that later. Earlier, I was in an anarchist stream, and when I called myself Zionist, he called me racist, fascist, idiot, and he said he wished I fell down a well. Then this piece of shit dumbfuck called himself pro-Hamas. Yep, I mean, that's how it normally goes, isn't it? In the fucking lefty spaces.
Demonstrate all of the 10 stages of genocide, but with the symbolism thing, like if you prevent people from being able to do puberty blockers, you're making it so that they can't pass. You're making it so that they're marked as trans forever, like with tens of thousands of dollars to repair the damage, and some of that's not even fixable. Like certain bone structures are not fixable. Birth certificates, like restrictions on changing birth certificates are another thing, but like that's kind of my broad basis there.
You had a good stream.
Alexander, I know that you're smarter than that. There's no way.
I want to go Malcolm, and then I have a question.
Also, please just try to ignore Zonia talking to her chat. This is the best video of it I could get.
And Rose.
Oh, I'm okay.
Wait, did I skip you, PV?
You did, yes.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go Malcolm, PV, Johnny Scarlet, Rose, Sonia.
Okay, as far as the symbolization is concerned, like symbolization is like when there is a symbol that is used to identify this group outside of other people. If you accept that symbolization means that, which it literally does, you can't say that just...
Right, we have already established that I think semantics are a lot more important than you do. I feel like if we continue to argue on that, I don't know, buddy. This whole argument, this whole fucking panel is about semantics, basically. So, you can't just say semantics aren't important, because then you're just going to say that the entire panel, and that's not. That doesn't help.
Not going on puberty blockers is symbolic enough to demonstrate like atypical phenotypical features that are associated with male or femaleness to be that discerning symbol. It would have to be something like a trans flag that was stamped on our IDs. We would have to have something that would denote that our assigned sex at birth was this, that, or the other thing. It's
they have attempted that.
They have, but it hasn't been passed, and that's a big part of it, right? If everything like fizzled up to a little dud in Nazi Germany, we wouldn't say that the Jews were genocided if nothing happened. But the thing is and I wanted to specify this as well because you keep bringing up bills that have been proposed. I agree that all of these bills are bad, and they're definitely something to raise an eyebrow at and say this is pretty fucked up. If this passes,
guys, Nightbot does have a fun announcement for us. It's probably gonna come soon anyways, but I'm just gonna ahead of time announce it with the command Bailey, !Bailey. We'll get you to Bailey's wish list on Amazon. She has things that she likes, and she would like you to buy her things.
Like you said, but the principle that they're not being passed in most states is
Bailey's
why it's
my
important
dog.
to focus on one, where they are located, right? So in red states, this is going to be a lot more like relevant and true versus like blue states like California or Washington, where it's like, yeah, maybe some crazy dude.
Your dog is e-begging now? Yeah, she really is.
Symbol right here on every single
wait till she takes over stream later today.
It is, but to say that it's on the same level as something that's being passed like in Indiana or Florida or anything like that is just, it's bonkers. I'm going to dogpile my side a little bit because I feel like we're going to dogpile Alexander really hard.
I told her that she needs to sell feet pics and she doesn't want to. How do they find out your Addy and social security number and mother's maiden name? You don't. If I did everything right, you don't. You shouldn't be able to, at least. The Nazi analogies are getting asinine. As someone whose grandparents fled the Nazis in Greece, compared to the genocide, of 6 million people for being Jewish to some LGBT laws is insane. I would have to agree with you. And that is why I have an issue with that. Your dog is a welfare queen? Yes, she knows. My welfare queen is also out of dog food. I was supposed to go today to get her more, and I forgot. So she got dinner tonight, and she's not getting breakfast tomorrow until after my classes, because I gotta go to class from like 9 to 2. And then I'll grab food on the way home. Yeah, but right, if you're comparing it to other genocides, you gotta talk about like the big genocides that people think of, which include the Holocaust.
So I'm gonna put on my other hat really quick and just say that from our side, quote unquote, excuse me, I'm so sorry. From the side of people that are like wanting to be a little bit more cautious with rhetoric, I don't disagree that there is like genocidal like predilections to this, but I try to be really careful and couch my language pretty significantly. Something that makes that really hard is when we have people that are like so stupid that they literally had to fucking Google genocide like the second that this panel started to even have a position on if there's a genocide or a genocide not happening. That's embarrassing, and I don't want to be ideologically grouped in with people that are that misinformed on this issue or that uninformed on this issue. And then I'm also going to come for you, Johnny. Don't think that you're safe up there. In your opening statement, you said,
I mean, right. I would also say that it's unfair to compare this to modern day genocides, right? Like things such as what's going on, or maybe it's over. I don't think it's over. What was going on in Myanmar, right? I don't think that it's fair to compare the U.S. situation to that. I don't think the U.S. situation fits that same level of severity, and that severity is genocide.
That it's impossible to genocide trans people because there will be future generations. Can you give me an example of a genocide that is not legitimate in your opinion, where there was no genocide because there were future generations of those people? Like, do you think the Jews weren't completely genocided, or they weren't genocided at all because Jews can be ethnically Jewish or religiously Jewish? Or
right, that quite literally is the issue. That is the conversation of the fucking panel, right? I know that you don't like it, but the entire issue on this panel is basically, should we call it a genocide or not? not like that it doesn't matter whether or not we call it. That's not what the point of this is. What up, Lou? How's your night going, buddy? What are you talking about? Is there a trans genocide occurring?
Ethnically or religiously Jewish perspective. I think that's very interesting. However, I am saying that we are going to continue to be born into future generations. And in the essence of cultural genocide, were that to happen, I think that those future generations would be prevented from coming out, prevented from having a trans or queer culture. Is the word queer okay here?
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
Please do.
Sweet. Okay. Preventing from having a queer culture, I think that is
hey, what's up,
more of the issue.
Sorry, I'm not paying
that would
attention to chat much. I'm trying to focus on this panel, and there's
that
a
would
lot of
be really
Zonia,
specific.
shut up.
we gotta
I
do.
want to focus on the panel
I
too.
apologize for ignoring
For sure.
chat.
I'm not going to cut anybody. I'm not going to cut anybody off, but it sounds like you're conflating like extinction of like a group of people versus genocide, and those aren't really like equal. But sorry, I'm done now. I'm done being
Right,
mean.
Sorry. Go.
I was just Lux, I was mainly going to ask you, and sorry, this is my first panel ever, so I've forgotten some of your points, but one thing that stuck out to me that you said was about the medical discrimination. I'll definitely agree that the medical discrimination for trans people can be like a little bit worrying. Like Malcolm said, like some of the like the fact that a lot of the bills have not passed is definitely like I hope. As far as some of the like I guess more details and stuff. I know that like Black people have also complained about medical discrimination at some points. What distinguishes trans people's discrimination in the medical field from
Lou,
other
I could get on board with that.
have like maybe been facing this kind of discrimination
I also
for a while?
don't think it's a genocide.
What makes that?
So,
what makes us genocidal versus like what makes us like
Genocide.
potential for genocide versus not them?
Lux, answer in like 1 minute, okay? And then I want to move on.
My answer to that is the United States is actively engaged in genocide of multiple different groups of people. Black people in particular, if you want me to just adjust that group specifically, there are, I think, just consistent policy attempts to reduce, it's not just literally reducing the numbers of their groups. Also is another part of the definition that I want to highlight is that it's also just creating conditions that are unlivable. So like if you create conditions where they're forced to commit crimes in order to survive because they're underemployed, like because there aren't any, like whatever, like it's a number of different facets. Black people have gone into this in depth or whatever, but like I think that it's clear if you like using the same like itinerary like definition that I use for genocide for trans people, yeah, the United States actively is trying to suppress the number of Black people or at least suppress like their quality of life to such a degree that they don't have opportunities and they're never able to like grow out. Like I think that there is a certain amount of like deliberate policy population control toward them. Like
I also think that this is the girl. I can't even. Okay, so she thinks that the genocide is happening to an extent, but she thinks of it in stages. But she also is like, it says that the only genocide, or she said something about the only genocide being fucking Neanderthals. I can't tell if I don't remember if she was joking during that or not. She's iffy so far. I'm also just going off of their voices right now, so bear with me. Energy, that's not what they're talking about. That's not what they're referencing. Look at that. I told you Nightbot was about to talk about it, and she did. Or he did. Is Nightbot a she or a he, guys? What do we think? Well, yeah. But that's... I mean, given her take, she would have to say that. Right? If you're gonna, like, actively say that there is a full-on genocide of trans people going on, then at some point you have to say that a bunch of other groups are also being genocided. It's also part of the issue with calling it a genocide is that it's just inaccurate. And what are they referencing? They're referencing the lack of gender affirming care. No bot is bot. They have no gender. Okay, well, I gotta reference them somehow. I'm gonna call. He's gonna be a he. Nightbot is a he.
Right, but
Americans, so it's a very
like
personal
you would need to
take.
have some intent in there, right? Though, because like you know, you can
it's like their personal belief about.
Systemically discriminate against somebody without the intent of like trying to.
Alex, I think everyone at some point thinks that Minnie squeaks means that we're hurting her, but she's just a crybaby.
Product or something, right? So you would have to like be able to ascribe intent to the like reducing of the number of Black people in this country as well, right?
I mean, do you need it caught on tape, or is like enough decades of consistent policy enough proof that
I think
like,
for the current day,
that there is like drive behind those things?
I think for the
like, why are they doing it?
Yes, Energy. I'm not saying you have to agree with it. I'm just saying that that's what they're talking about.
I think for the current day, you would definitely need to see some intent. Obviously, systemic discrimination could come from historical standpoints, in which case, like, I could see your point in that. But again, like, I mean, a big part of genocide is the intent part. So in order to call it a genocide versus just systemic discrimination, you would have to tell me what is different between how trans people are being medically discriminated against versus Black people. Or if you want to call them both genocide without intent.
Alrighty. Johnny Scarlet, I would like you to go, this was, Malcolm kind of brought it up, kind of stole my thunder here, but I kind of want you to go more in depth on
you have different definitions of
Can you go more
transition than most people? All right, shut up.
The idea that we haven't existed for pretty much the entirety of modern humans is
we have a fucking touchy subject apparently.
We've obviously seen other cultures and parts of the world have an amount of trans people or gender nonconformity for a very long time. However, I would say that it's been happening.
It's using the term a little too loosely.
It's been a thing in Western culture pretty much the entire time the West has existed, that we have been put under some sort
broadly
of
speaking anyway. In specific areas, we can observe more
right now, which is a much
might consider
quicker,
to be
more intentional form.
It's still a semantical
suppression, I think,
argument,
is
right?
which I think it was intentional before, but I think it was like the echoes
things are great.
All right. Let's see if we can look this up and get in a definition that we can agree on. What is gender transition? The process by which a transgender person permanently adopts the outward or physical characteristics that match their gender identity as opposed to those associated with the sex registered to them at birth. This process may or may not involve measures such as hormone therapy and gender reassignment surgery. So it doesn't have to involve surgery, and you can get hormones under 18 in most states. There you go. Google did not own me. Google exactly said what I have said.
Other older societies. So I think that we will continue to be born is pretty much, it is what it sounds like. We'll continue to be born whether or not we're able to have a queer culture, whether or not we're
literally said what you said. Google is talking about the medical transition, which I mentioned to you already. And I said that the medical transition also does happen under 18. Rye is being a little bitch. No offense, Rye. And Energy is also kind of being a little bitch. Lou, that's my best explanation of it. Dude, Rye, by this definition, almost every state. Washington, for example, is 1. California for 2. Almost every single state. It's physical transition permanent. There are permanent changes that happen with hormones. For example, for trans men, testosterone has permanent effects. For example, voice and hair growth. Estrogen has permanent effects. For example, breast growth. I'm not talking about puberty blockers. I'm talking about hormones, you fucking idiot. Do you understand how to listen, bro?
Able to come out and to exist as we are, that's the question.
Rosemary.
All right, well, thank you. First of all, I want to address what Malcolm said. I mentioned that definition.
Right. 4 of my best friends growing up were on hormones at 16. You are just incorrect. And let's see. How many trans youth are on hormone replacement therapy? From 2017 through 2021, at least 14,726. I would say the number is higher than that. Anyways, yes, this does happen, dude. Right, we just looked at the definition of gender transition, and both of these things are classified as gender affirming care as well. Buddy, right, you do not know what you're talking about. I hate to break it to you, you do not know what you're talking about. I understand the argument you're trying. No laws allow for minors to permanently transition. There are permanent side effects to hormone replacement therapy. So, considering almost every state allows hormone replacement therapy under 17 or under 18. Yes. Oh my god. What are the permanent permanent side effects of HRT? Really? Stop licking your butthole right next to me. Alright, alright. Energy. Not doing that shit. Be nice. Okay. Hold up, I think I gotta look at these individually. So let's start with testosterone. I want side effects. Hold up. I know it's on the Seattle Children's site. Here we go. Does it have a specific section that says what? Okay. Most of the changes you'll notice from testosterone are not fully reversible, even if you stop taking testosterone. Permanent, not reversible. Deeper voice, hair growth, male pattern baldness. It may or may not happen based on your family history. Great. Let's see if they have one on estrogen as well. Some of the changes you will notice from the feminizing hormones, hormone therapy, are not permanent. If you stop taking medicine, some of the changes will stop. There are 3 types of changes that may be permanent: breast growth, fertility, fat distribution to hips. There you go. There are permanent side effects. Energy was just being a dick to Rye, Lou. Where are the minors in that? This is Seattle Children's Hospital. They serve minors. They also served all of my friends who transitioned as children, or as minors. You only showed stages. Techie, Rye is just being an idiot. Okay, let's go back to Seattle Children's actually. Seattle Children's, age to begin transition, I guess. We accept new patients ages 9 to 16. Gender forming hormones. There you go. But this is a children's hospital, bro. I cited a children's hospital for this. Techie, he doesn't understand that there are permanent side effects to some of the things offered, to like some of the transition things offered to children. Gender affirming care is not transitioning. Okay, but again, if the gender affirming care has permanent transitioning effects, right, then that would qualify, including things like for testosterone, a deeper voice; for estrogen, tits. Dude, this hospital serves minors. Only serves minors, pretty much. Energy, no, but I will give you your points back. Requests queue. Okay. Right, what is wrong with you? Does Seattle Children's offer, or let's even go further. Fuck, it froze. God damn it. Why'd we freeze? What in the fuck? There we go. Offer, let's even go further. Let's go offer surgeries to trans minors. This is from National Review. Seattle Children's Hospital performs some gender-affirming surgeries on children under 18. Genital surgeries require the child to be 18, but not all surgeries. Gender-affirming care is using their pronouns. I'm 100% against any shit like medicine or surgery. There isn't enough studies. We just started doing this en masse recently. I mean, that's fair as long as you're only talking about kids. Patients must be 18 or older for gender-affirming genital procedures. That's what we call bottom surgery, right? So we can look at top surgery. See, this is breast and chest. This is genitals. So this, you can still get under 18. How about you start reading, bro? Again, like I said, I have friends who went to this exact hospital and who got surgery at this exact hospital under 18. This one from Alex. Yeah, we just looked at that one. There's girls that have top surgery due to physical problems. That's nothing to do with trans people. This is a gender clinic, not a anything else clinic. They treat gender issues. Bro's literally screaming at his computer. I know, right, Lou? The thing is that it's not even that I disagree with him on, like, the actual topic that we're talking about. Well, I disagree with him on the topic, kind of. But, like, the thing about it is that I'm not even saying that any of this is a bad thing. I'm just saying it exists because it's idiotic to try to just ignore the fact that it exists. And he's still just so fucking mad, bro. And he's so wrong also, which is just hilarious to me. Energy, stop. Be nice.
It's what the vast majority of people hear when they use the word genocide, and that was a quick way of expressing that, but okay. I'm not a fan of the personal attacks. I think we're having a nice productive conversation here. I think, first of all, I want to also address, I think, what Lux said about the hormone law being passed, like not letting kids transition. I want to say this because, like, I transitioned at 14 years old, right? For trans women especially, it's important to transition at those ages, and I'm living proof that those are good things. That being said, I still think it's dishonest to call that a genocide.
Techie, there's so many things that you can do to your own body that aren't studied well, or that are studied and show negative side effects that you're still allowed to do. It's the same as, for example, a lot of plastic surgery. Right, but we allow plastic surgery. And if someone is aware of the risks and they still consent to it, I don't see the problem with it.
Something can be bad without us using extreme buzzwords to try to exaggerate an action that we disagree with. These laws don't have genocidal intent. In their eyes, they think they're protecting children from what they see as irreversible harm. Now, obviously, they're wrong, and those bans will only lead to trans people being hurt, but it doesn't mean that they want to, like, get rid of us or say trans people. I'm sure there's some people out there who don't like trans people, but they don't want to see us being killed, right? And also, I watched Lux's video a few weeks ago. Now it's not fresh in my mind.
Hey, Jenny,
something about like the 10 short steps to trans extermination, and I remember seeing 2 of those steps and thinking, like, wait a second, okay, that's kind of a reach. I don't think we're quite there. I think it was 5 and 7, but I could be wrong about that. But yeah, that's where I'm gonna stop.
All right, Zonia.
Yeah, so there were a few things I want to touch on, but we've kind of moved past them. So instead, what I'm going to focus on is bring up something that I would like to see if we could kind of all address a bit and talk about. One of the things that I think is important to take note of is that the vast majority of these anti-trans bills do not pass. And I think that's a really important sign because it's right now we're in the spotlight. So we're a very popular subject right now. And we are starting to actualize our independence and our rights, which is really important. This is something that was also experienced in the years leading up to the civil rights, or during the civil rights movement. There was a backlash as well. And what you found was that the backlash was because of the fact that people were actualizing their rights and their independence. And that's sort of a good sign.
It kind of surprises me hearing that coming from, I believe, a lefty, because usually the lefties are actually really big fans of my take on these issues. But you know, everyone's got something that sets them off, I guess, and usually it's not really explainable as to why. They just kind of are like that. He's one of them. Excuse the medical industry from taking advantage of vulnerable people. If an adult thinks they're trans blind in the medical field, the medical field is worse than scum for fulfilling that request of someone clearly mentally unsound. Except for the fact that the like data-driven most successful treatment for dysphoria is transitioning. Right? Even if these things don't have as much research as we would like on them, it has the best outcomes. Whether or not you like that, I don't really give a fuck. It has the best outcomes for trans people. Wait, what did you say about leftists? I didn't hear you. Lefties normally like my take on trans stuff. He was a little mad.
Is that we're out there. We're being noticed for being out there. We're being noticed for actualizing our rights and our independence. And there's some pushback.
I don't really give a fuck if they care, Techie.
But guess what? Overall,
and if they're doing things that lead to better outcomes, then I'm not
even
mad.
in the red states. So the vast majority of those bills do not pass. Some of these really bad ones have passed, unfortunately, particularly in Texas and Florida. And there's more aggressive bills being drafted at the moment as we speak. But overall, there's been significant progress, and it continues moving in a positive direction. So that's a really important thing to recognize, and I think that we should talk about that more, and we should basically capitalize on that momentum. And if we instead ignore that momentum and start saying that there's genocide against us, we're almost like dismissing the positive and dismissing the momentum and dismissing our ability to capitalize on that momentum. And that's something I think we could do a lot of good with.
Like the perfect argument here. Agree with that? Not gonna lie.
I think that actually boils into kind of our next question a little bit. Like, do we think that calling the trans genocide, or do we think that like calling the systemic discrimination that everybody's facing a genocide, do we think that's helpful for passing pro-trans legislation or changing the sentiment?
I don't think so.
No.
I think overall it
would start.
Look at that consensus.
Yeah, I think overall it would just turn into a semantical debate.
It's crazy.
Again, and there would not be a lot of productivity there.
It's almost like maybe
I think it's actually way
point.
easier in a way, or not easier, but more productive to focus on the individual issues, the individual instances of oppression that we have to deal with. I think if we focus on those, we can more effectively tackle those. If we try hinging everything on the word genocide, that doesn't really describe anything specific to address. It doesn't describe things to call out and to take action on. And that's more important than trying to win this battle of one word. And I don't think I don't think we're going to have much traction in trying to fight over that word. I don't think it's going to get us the momentum that we think we're going to get. And I think we already have a lot of momentum that we can take advantage of. And trying to split hairs on one word is just going to dilute that momentum if we don't focus our energy on that momentum.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't agree with the trans genocide sentiment. I think that she's less against using that word than I am, but she got the same overall idea.
Brother Malcolm.
I honestly don't really know like how I feel about this question or like the answer to it. I think that Zonia is right in part, like the idea that it's going to create like a kind of sprout off debate, more so than focusing on the actual issue like
I don't know.
Hand. And something that I worry about with the language
Probably
of genocide,
not.
like
I don't think
said
so.
a little bit earlier, is it's very Holocaust-esque, and I feel like that invokes such a very
on my phone, at least,
reaction.
if that's what we're talking
and
about.
if that reaction isn't reflected in their perception of what's really happening, it's kind of like they're just full of shit and they walk away and they don't care. And it kind of turns out into like a boy who cried wolf kind of situation, where if it does get to the point where they do have like our little summer vacation camps that are not very fun, it's like, well, yeah, but you guys said it was genocide when they just said that they didn't want to, allow, puberty blockers for people under 13.
It's really windy out there.
Now. It's just like, it's just summer camp, guys. Like, calm down. I think that can be an issue. Like, I'm kind of looking like down the road. Like saying like using alarmist rhetoric can help kind of that backlash, like that quote unquote blue wave that might help damper a lot of this legislation. But I don't think genocide is the word that's going to do that. I think it's only going to cause like the boy who cried wolf syndrome, and then just the way that it invokes such a very specific.
Hey, look at that boy who cried wolf
of crime. I don't think that most people are going to really resonate with that. And I don't think it's going to do really what we want it to. But yeah.
Stop.
Rosemary.
Oh, I didn't have much to say. I just don't think they're ever really going to put us in camps. I think if they ever did, I think even like the most extreme conservatives would kind of question and be like, okay, that's a bit weird.
Lay down.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Nope.
All right. Power bottom. Politics.
I think the genocide discourse. First of all, I don't know how. Bailey, I don't go outside a whole lot. I go to work and I come home. I don't know how big that discourse is in, like, you know, actual trans activist spaces where they're actually doing stuff. You know, where they're like pushing against legislation and stuff. I don't know how many of them actually buy into this idea. So I know that it's more of like an online thing in the first place. So I don't know if right now.
We got a paragraph while I was looking down. It's not gay at all to like masculine features like broad shoulders and strength in women, right? Nope. You like penis? No, then it's not gay. Support has the best outcome, not transition. If a trans person transitions and nobody outside of them acknowledges their gender identity, the transition plays little role. They want acceptance. They are willing to do anything to get acceptance. They hate themselves and being reminded that they aren't what they claim only hurts them regardless of surgery, so transitioning medically isn't the best option. You're grouping support with medical transition, which aren't mutually exclusive. Well, they should go together, right? The best outcomes from them the best outcomes are from them going together. But surgery versus not surgery, surgery has the better outcome. That's what I'm talking about. Penis is awesome, dude. I know. It's fucking amazing.
Of this discourse is even that severe, but I will say that it is a bit frustrating that there's such a rift happening where it's like, I guess in some way I just see it as like a bit of a waste of time, where it's like, you know, any of our energy that we could be putting towards proving that it is a genocide, we could be putting towards preventing it from getting past stage 4, if we are even at stage 4. You know what I mean? We don't need to be necessarily talking about it. I know that's ironic coming from me who's on a panel about this, but I think in general, our energies would be better used focusing on preventing it from getting any worse than it possibly already is, with the amount of hateful language and that kind of stuff coming from conservative pundits when it comes to trans people. I just think that we should be spending more of our time talking about solutions and less of our time talking about home policing people and trying to get them to admit that it's a genocide. Exactly. So some people.
Fuck, I know what that means, but I don't know what that means. You know? You guys ever have those words? Oh, no. Very much no.
Feel better about like the situation. I don't know. That's just how I feel about it personally.
Every time he lags, I get worried that I'm losing my connection.
So the question is,
let me listen to the panels.
Is using the word genocide rhetorically effective for changing the law? Is that the question?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not necessarily like clinging to the idea that the word genocide is like the most rhetorically effective thing for changing the law. Like, the word literally just does definitely.
Why not? Because you're equating a sexual attraction with gender dysphoria, which is a mental illness. Like you're equating a kink and gender, which are two completely separate things.
Additionally apply. And like, so to me, when I say something's is like a genocidal intent or whatever, like I'm not necessarily doing that in order to be rhetorically inflammatory. Like,
I don't know the numbers on
that,
so I don't know.
Like, I'm sorry if it makes you feel bad, but that is what's happening. Like, you know, if you like. A couple questions that I would like to put to the panel, since this seems to be kind of the sticking point.
No, the answer would be no, because if that's what is motivating people to transition, they're not trans. They just have a kink that they're so steadfast on that they are idiots about. That is not being trans. What you're describing has nothing to do with actually being trans. No, surgery versus no surgery. The surgery is the better option. Support versus no support. Support is the better option. Okay, surgery and no support is better than no surgery, no support. Support and no surgery is better than no support and no surgery. Okay, but you want as many of those yeses as you can get, because that is going to have the best outcomes.
Points that I'm kind of finding here is like, first of all, how can we demonstrate intent? If you say that there is not sufficient evidence for intent, then I would like you to describe to me how we suss out intent. And also, is there a different word to describe policy attempts to reduce numbers of a group and create conditions of life which are unlivable for them, which cause suicides, which cause significant worse mental health outcomes? If you would prefer to use the term exterminationalist policy, I think that I could be convinced by that argument. If you just think that the average person is just going to be turned off by the word genocide, but you know, frankly, like if the definition, like again, if you just look at the more conservative definitions of intent to reduce numbers in a group, actions taken to reduce numbers in the group, and looking at the material effect that they have, like I don't necessarily think that the laws overall not passing is an indication that things are not bad. Do you know that in Texas and in Florida, when they restricted access to trans kids having medical care, they went outside the legal like system of the democratic legal system? They used executive powers to declare that this was not effective medical care. Like This is fascism. They don't care about going through the routine ways of doing this. They're just going to do it however.
You want to know what I had today? I had some friends. I had some friends. I had a friend come over and we had breakfast. I made fucking waffles and eggs. Shit was fire. And then for dinner, I made chicken nuggets. And then I made garlic butter. And I poured the garlic butter over the chicken nuggets. And then I put Parmesan on top. And it was basically like garlic parm wings, but chicken nuggets. Shit was fire as hell.
Regardless of the effect. So that's my answer.
You mind if I cut in on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Lux, you said that you admitted that you weren't sure that it was the most rhetorically effective for word for getting support to pass laws, right? So the whole reason why we would want to use a certain word to invoke alarm would be for effectiveness of gaining support for pushing things in a positive direction, right? Okay. So,
like I said earlier, I need to go to the fucking
store.
Does
that matter to you? Do you care about the effectiveness of rallying support to push against anti-trans legislation and anti-trans executive power?
So I don't think that legislation is certainly a concern, and perhaps amongst primary concerns, but it's certainly not my only concern. Like, I think that because of the way that the legal system has been stolen from any real democratic input, like I think it's very clear if you look at the gerrymandering across this country, the stacking of courts, like there's no real, I don't really think that there is a way to fight legally against this. Like, yes, continue voting for sure, keep doing that. Contact your legislature.
The trans people who don't plan on getting surgeries are just edge cases. They don't intend for surgery because of the risk involved, and I support that. Unless they're talking about implants, which is whatever, but estrogen gives breasts, so they'd probably just be on that. So there is plenty of trans people who don't opt for bottom surgery specifically, which is very much a risk reward thing. It's not that they don't want it, it's that it's not worth the risk in its current development, right? But that is completely different from saying like, oh, they just shouldn't have it, because there are also plenty of trans people who opt to get it because they feel it's worth it. Top surgery is a much more common one. That, at least last I checked, the majority of trans people get top surgery at some point, or they haven't yet because of things like monetary issues. But these surgeries generally help with the treatment of the gender dysphoria. That's also scary as fuck. Yes, surgery in general is scary. And even when people don't get it, a lot of times it's not a case of they don't want to get it. It's a case of it's fucking surgery. And especially if you have other complicating factors, it's fucking surgery, bro. Like, you can die on the operating table. And it has happened. As has happened with every single other surgery. It's one of those things where surgery is always a risk reward, and that just because you choose against the risk doesn't mean that you don't want the surgery. You don't want whatever that surgery is offering.
I contacted my senator this week when I realized that my home state passed or has introduced pre-filed a law restricting access to trans care for kids or up to the age of 25 or 21. That's still important, but like, frankly, like, we just need more people aware of what's happening. And like, the things that you've said, I don't disagree that there could be, I guess, better rhetorical ways of going about this. But like, if you think that, despite the fact that the definition of genocide is being like whether or not, I guess, you agree on whether that specifically, like, that word applies, which I just happen to think that it does. Like, it's just a matter of fact to me. I could see myself adapting politically for the purpose of, like, if on the ground people will get on our side more and they won't, like, turn off their brains or something, I could be persuaded on that. I just think that the word literally applies.
So my problem with that argument, though, is that, okay, so there's a couple things here. Like, you want to have a word that invokes alarm, an appropriate level of alarm, to get attention on something. So that attention matters. The whole point is to get attention on the issues and find some way to address them.
The whole point is attention.
And you're saying that there's no way to affect the anti-trans legislation and anti-trans executive power, right? At least within the system. But in some way, you want to draw attention to this. Now, I firmly disagree with you. I think we still have a lot of democratic process that still works, especially like here where I am in California. We absolutely have had a very positive swing as for pro-LGBTQ rights in California. Our democratic process does seem to be pretty strong here. And we have Republican representatives in this state who have failed to try to find ways to circumvent that, to push anti-trans legislation. So we've actually been in a very positive swing direction for a long time now. So, I would disagree with you on that. But sure, but so I would disagree with you on that. But what I would want to say,
and then Johnny.
What I would want to ask you is, like, what is the point? Like, how do you rally support Right, especially if you're trying to pick words that are highly divisive, that would cause a lot of people whose ancestors or even recent within living memory relatives suffered what are globally recognized as genocides. A lot of people would shear off from supporting that word being applied to us. Half of my family would be of that lot. So how do you, like, you want to rally support or at least get observation of these issues and raise alarm? How do you do that? Like, what is your method of doing that? Like, do you get what I'm asking? Like, you seem to want to do that for some kind of reason, but you want to use a word that maybe you personally think fits the definition, but a lot of people would disagree with you, and that would be a sticking point for them on whether or not they recognize the level of...
Exactly. It stops the conversation, which is why part of the reason that you shouldn't use the fucking word. And also, it is just an inaccurate, like, definitionally, it is just inaccurate. So again, you shouldn't use the word.
Alarm that you want them to recognize because of that word. So how do you get that support when you're using such a divisive word?
I would first like to say that I really don't think that Republicans in your great state of California feel very well represented. I have seen them talking about it. I, as a Democrat in Kansas, am not very well represented, and that might be a reason why so many people like you and I go to California. So I don't really think that California is a great representation of, like, the success of democracy. So
it's all about perspective.
Like, people who think that the word genocidal is divisive, like, what's my way of dealing with the fact that that's rhetorically supposedly ineffective? I mean, like, I demonstrated it. I could make the same video that I made a couple months ago, like Rose referenced. I made a video going over the 10 stages of genocide as represented by Gregory H. Stanton's research, and I have more examples of all of the stages. Like, and
I mean,
like,
to be
so
one of your examples of civilization was pretty much just Steven Crowder doing a stereotype. That's not the same thing as, like, Jews wearing, like, Stars of David on their shirts. You know, like, I mean, there's some things that could probably be said.
Yeah, like, whenever someone tries to make the stages of genocide fit with this situation, it always minimizes when these things have actually happened, because it makes it look like it was nothing. It makes it look like, again, like, I don't think that Jews are the only example of this, right? But it's the easiest example because everyone knows about it. So it's like saying that trans people having, for example, a gender marker on their birth certificate or their ID is the same as a Jewish person having to openly wear the Star of David every single place that they go or risk getting arrested. Like, these are different situations, and trying to act like they're the same is fucking idiotic.
That video. Sorry. No,
well,
can I respond to that directly really quickly?
Sure.
You were breaking up a little bit.
30 seconds, and then I want to go on to Johnny and a couple other people on the panel.
Speaking of the symbolism thing, like...
My bad.
You're good. So there are multiple ways that symbolism applies here, not only making it impossible for people to pass because they're restricted from puberty blockers, but making it so that they have to sterilize themselves in order to change their birth certificate. Like, the fact that you have to produce your birth certificate for certain things.
And you just don't have to change your birth certificate. And you can freeze your eggs and shit like that. Or you can freeze your sperm, you can freeze your eggs, you can freeze everything. Like, this is not like people being forcibly sterilized. Is a choice that you make, and there are ways around it in terms of not being able to have biological kids.
And the fact that you will be marked as trans because you can't change it, or you have to sterilize yourself, like, that's two different aspects of genocide right there. Like, that's marking you and reducing, like, potential membership in the groups through sterilization, like, through policy.
Oh, that's so different.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think you can tell
just because it's indirect
natural appearance in a certain way. I don't think you can take somebody's natural appearance in a certain way, like, and then call that symbolization. Black people are not symbolized just because they're skin colored.
Well, in the case of, like,
if you made a policy that they had
to be a certain darkness
or something, though,
like, an image.
No, it's so apples and oranges.
What up, Gifted? How's your night going, buddy?
Actual, like, it's not the same thing as describing, like, an actual symbol to somebody. You know what I mean?
The self-optic in is, like, the most important part, because you could say that, like, the Jewish people in Nazi Germany, like, were subjected to the symbolization law because they went to synagogues, or because they said, I am Jewish, when they asked what faith do you practice, right? Or what are you ethnically? Oh, I'm Jewish. But they're self-selecting for that. That is worlds apart from somebody saying, this is your symbol, you have to wear it so I can identify you.
Exactly. You can choose to put yourself into a group, and you can be forced to put yourself into a group. This is a choice matter.
Those are two totally different things. They're not even the same world.
And again, just because they didn't pass doesn't mean that there haven't been laws introducing the concept that you can change the gender on your ID, on your birth certificate, but you can change your sex. Like, attempts are genocide. Like, that is what it is.
Are not genocide. No.
Right, so Johnny Scarlet is
not
going
the
to
same
go
thing as
for,
successfully
like,
passing a law.
Okay.
Johnny Scarlet.
You have to have some level of success for it to be genocide. I'm not saying you have to, like, fully genocide a group to have it be considered a genocide. Like, you don't have to eradicate a group for it to be genocide. But you have to have some level of success there to consider it a genocide. I feel like that's common knowledge, or like basic knowledge.
She has like 4 minutes if she wants, and then we're gonna do Rose Malay, and then we'll do
they're not
Malcolm,
going to win many people over with this kind of
I'm bad at interrupting
argument.
people, so I do agree with Zonia and PB on this idea that
hey, Smug Bud.
we
Thank you for the raid, buddy.
In positive representation, and we do
Is that a Louisiana flag? That's crazy. I totally knew what the Louisiana
while there
flag
aren't really
was.
a lot of LGBT centers in my area in South Louisiana, my advocacy has always been exist as I am as a non-binary trans person, and change the people in my life to understand
me shout out Goon
and
as well.
To want to vote in the favor of people like me.
Hope you had a good stream.
The positive for us as a group, and this is going to sound really preachy, but we have to let the positive affect us in a way that shows.
I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you there. I don't think I could disagree with you there.
Hey, Oscar, how you doing?
We have a lot of evidence on this panel, and I think that Lux has made a really compelling argument for the stages of genocide, applying to certain states in America. However,
very much not compelling, but okay.
I think that this is going to
debate you on what?
With all of the positive representation
that gay people are hot. I agree with you though.
I have a lot of hope that this is going to be something that is a swing in the direction of we are reacting. Like all of this negative attention, all of this negative legislative attention is very reactionary, and I have a lot.
How am I supposed to debate you? I agree with you.
Back the other way and swing into a good middle ground wherein we are within acceptability, and we have the ability to not necessarily have to cling to something like the word genocide in order to make our statements known.
We gotta make this faster.
That's pretty much what I got right now.
Rosemary.
All right. Well, so first of all, when it comes to not letting trans people change the birth certificates or something like that, to what you said, these are laws that I feel like are outdated, and I think that they should be changed. But this was like something that was like the case long time ago. I don't think you can really make the argument that this is something new or something that refers to like symbols and stuff. Nothing that I really heard from that feels like symbols to me. I mean, the transphobic hate symbol, like the pink triangle, like in Nazi Germany and stuff, that was like a thing. But I don't see people like flying symbols about their hatred for trans people. So I mean, maybe it does exist. I just haven't seen it. But when it comes to the current state of trans issues, I think we're in this really weird place.
Gifted, fuck up. True that there are more. All right, vaping means they make good choices with their life.
I think that's a great thing. We'll see that go up over
and
time.
That they're doing things that give them stress.
People knowing that we exist, and
so they're doing good things probably.
But at the same time, there's also never been more anti-trans people than there are right now. I've seen it. You know, I transitioned back in 2014, and it was just a bunch of people who didn't know what it was.
That might be entertaining.
But they didn't care. They didn't revolve their lives around it. You didn't see people in the media talking about it. They moved on with their lives. So I mean, there's good and bads to it. I think we're just in a weird part of culture. I think we're going to get past this. I think it's going to be more positive over time. But with this exposure and people finding out what being trans actually is, you're having a bunch of people who really don't like the idea and are spreading hate towards it. I think the propaganda is a problem.
Breathing air sounds
my opinion
boring.
About the state we're in currently.
The fuck?
Rosemary, really
why would I breathe air?
What propaganda are you talking about?
When it comes to propaganda, I mean, like, for instance, like people, like mostly on the right, but people in general, kind of saying like trans people are like invading your bathrooms. They're coming after your children. They're essentially trying to make us seem like we're predators or shit, something like that. Or this whole idea that it's like a social contagion of being trans. I mean, there's just so many things I've just heard over the years of trans people being a threat. And this is why this is a huge issue that you need to care about. And
I don't need to do shit, Gifted. I want to do.
It's dangerous for society or something like that. I mean, other people could probably explain it better. But yeah.
Malcolm.
So I think I'm just kind of like reiterating what I said earlier. I think something that's important for me anyway to be mindful of when we're talking about like the escalating trend of trans people being targeted by legislation or or being targeted by discrimination.
That's what they all say.
Genocide is such a loaded fucking word.
Fuck off. The argument that the necessity of medical transition undermines, much like trans-disabled surgery shows positive benefits en masse, medical transition shows positive outcomes en masse. With that being stated, it undermines the argument that the individual with the dysphoria knows what's best medically for themselves. That's what's being challenged. Yeah, but the consensus of doctors and psychologists also agree that this is what's best. It's not like it's just the individual saying, I want to get surgery, so I'm right. Like, that's not... You're like acting like this is all... The trans person wants something, so they automatically get it, which is just not the case in most places.
It's like if you are talking to a vegan and they say, well, the animal holocaust is happening right now, your brain literally just turns off. It powers down completely. You don't hear anything else they have to say because you're like, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard in my entire fucking life. It's definitely not like the Holocaust. Even if they could make a pretty good argument that maybe it is similar to the Holocaust. It's such a trigger word. It is such a buzzword. Like comparing anything to slavery, the Holocaust, genocide, anything like that, it's just an immediate L. And I think that part of the issue that we're having is, I think that it was Zonia that brought it up, is that dying on the semantics hill is kind of what's killing this conversation in the water, I think. Not just on this panel, like, but literally, like, if we're talking about the kind of legislation that we're seeing, the snowballing effect of like anti-trans sentiment in the US, specifically in red states, a lot of it is like what it's funneling down to is like us arguing with each other about is genocide.
Give Bailey a treat. Oh shit, there was 2 Give Bailey a treats. You guys wanted to give Bailey 2 treats. What up, Leviticus? How's your night going? Alright, well this is a perfect time for me to also plug in my cartridge of cancer, I guess, if you want to call it that. I can fucking plug it in, Jesus Christ. Alright, cartridge of cancer plugged in. Alright, Lou. Animal Holocaust sounds wild, no pun intended. Run, guys, he about to plug. Oh my god. I love that I said the give Bailey a treat thing to you guys, and she came running over. She was on the other side of the room, and she just came sprinting over here. You watched Avatar 2, it's pretty damn good. I've been wanting to see it. Don't spoil that shit. It's not gonna blow up. Shut the fuck up, you did. Alright, you know the deal, Bailey. Come on. What the fuck was that? She just leapfrogged my chair. What the fuck? Here, Bailey. If I put you on the big screen, will you look at yourself and just let it happen? Come here. Don't leapfrog it again. Come here. There you go. That's it. Good girl. Now look it straight. Look, it's you. See, that's you. Part dog, part frog. Facts. They gave you 2 treats. 2 treats. Do it right into the mic. Why'd you turn away? Are you self-conscious of the mic today? Here, right into the mic. There you go. There is her 2 treats. Stream takeover? Wanna hang out on stream? Yeah, Gifted, that was a little rude. I feel like you just hurt Nightbot's feelings. Of course he's just gonna say it more. If you hurt his feelings, he's just gonna say, fuck you. Make America suck again. Alright, Bailey, plug your wish list. Remember? We made your wish list earlier? Stop licking me. You made your wish list earlier? Plug it. Tell them you want it. Tell them how much you want it. No, you gotta tell them. Not me. I'm not buying shit for you. I spent too much money on your food. You gotta tell them. Alright. Do you want to be done? Do you want to go on the couch? Come on. You're not getting any more treats, and you drooled all over my fucking mouse pad. Get off. Go. Good girl. Alright. Shit's nasty. It's a new ass mouse pad too. Techie, the thing about it is that when there is no better treatment, the best possible treatment is what needs to be applied, right? And currently there is no better treatment. There's no better treatment in terms of outcomes. There's no way to just make dysphoria not exist. So, you have to treat the dysphoria, and the only way to actually treat dysphoria is to give into it. Even though the doctor says, yes, the plate of cookies showed immensely positive effects. Alright, let's continue.
Appropriate word. And so I like that Lysander is willing to fall on the sword and say, like, well, I would accept like other definitions that are also extremist or also alarmist, because I think that this demands a certain level of alarm, which I agree with to an extent in red states. But I think that dying on the hill of genocide is so fucking stupid, and it's the last thing that we should be doing right now.
Agreed.
I don't know if you expected me to jump in, Will.
No, what I'm trying to think about is just... So, okay, here's a good question for the panel. What do we think is the most effective praxis for passing pro-trans legislation?
Actually doing shit.
Sorry. Direct action, baby. Let's go.
Yeah.
Both the panel, honestly. I'm really curious.
Yeah, both a combination of direct action as well as like just grassroots. There's a lot of attention we can bring to a lot of these bills that come up. There are multiple websites, but there's one in particular that I follow that will let you know about when there is anti-trans legislation that has been proposed.
Techie, I'm saying if we find out later that it's not, then we should go on and do whatever treatment we have. But every treatment we do for literally anything is the best treatment at the time. And treatments change. Yeah, maybe one day we'll figure out how to make it just go away. But currently, we do not have that solution. So, we need to do whatever we know works, which is allowing people to transition. Yeah, Lou, as of what we know right now, yeah, it can't be cured. But again, I mean, who the fuck knows what's going to happen in 100 years? Like, what kind of science we're going to have in 100 years? But for current day, that doesn't fucking matter.
That's being looked at, right? That's been drafted.
Was that Ashley's? That's Ashley's, isn't it?
And you can go through. I'll link it at the end of the panel. I'll pop it into our group chat. But yeah, you can look at that. You can draw attention to it. I've actually covered it on my streams multiple times before. You can get people in those states to to take action. There are LGBTQ organizations like here where I live. We've got an LGBTQ organization here in my town.
Exactly.
And when these kinds of things come up, they are looking for people to help bring the word out, to get attention to it, to spread it around, share it on social media, share it to your relatives that are in the state, share it around, and as well as to go and protest these things, to call up the legislators and say, I'm one of your constituents, do not vote for this bill, or vice versa when it comes to pro LGBTQ and pro trans bills. And that kind of stuff actually does have the ability to affect change. So I think that's a really important thing to do, is to get that kind of attention on. Even though a lot of our politicians or representatives are corrupt, the reality is, if their constituents are angry with them and call them up and fill up their emails and such, they will cave to the constituents eventually. So that's a really important thing to do, is to make sure that the people know what their representatives are doing and are aware of it. And you can also kind of circumvent the anti-trans propaganda that comes along with those bills, because there's a lot of money circulating that are paying for ads and such to fearmonger about trans people and to help bolster support for these anti-trans bills.
Nikki, the standard is about results. Jesus Christ, you have an inability to understand that plenty of studies show that this is the best treatment in terms of overall outcomes.
So the more that we mobilize and take action and let people know about what's going on with these bills and talk to people about it and encourage them to go and act on it, the more we can push back against that machine that's trying to fearmonger about us as well.
Malcolm.
I think that like local direct action and helping individual trans people is going to be probably the most beneficial, like in our little community of trans people, right? So making sure that people have access to hormones, to medical intervention, stuff like that. If somebody's in a state where they're considering banning this, maybe like start troubleshooting with them, put them in contact with people that can help them either leave the state or get access to this kind of stuff while they're in that state, kind of flying under the radar. I think that would be one. Something that I think is important, and this is just me, obviously, from my perspective, I think that humanizing ourselves to people that don't like us is something that's really powerful as well. As somebody who has like a ton of conservative family who grew up with very conservative people, like incredibly conservative people, something that goes a really long way in kind of reaching across the aisle and getting even like the most hardcore conservative people to kind of humanize and see trans people is not like this, hypothetical boogeyman that's waiting in the bathroom to attack their wives and children. It's just kind of humanizing yourself to these people and making sure that like in real life you're building these connections. It's pretty hard to do online, when all we do is like cuss each other out and tell each other to unalive each other in video games, and it's very heated, it's very spicy, it's very toxic. But in real life,
there are individual studies that say that, but the meta-analyses do not say that.
To build those bridges, those connections are invaluable, and that is how you change people's minds and opinions and perspectives on trans people in America. And I'm not saying just like go to like a Klan rally and be like, what's up guys, I'm trans and I'm actually pretty cool. Like I'm not saying that. I'm saying like in your local communities, in your local, if you go to the bar and there's like some dude in a Trump hat and you strike up a conversation, he's just sitting there and it's like, oh, by the way, I'm trans. He's like, what? I didn't see you fuck a single kid in this bar and you're trans? You're kidding. No way. That's awesome. I had no idea that there were no kid fucking trans people. You would be amazed at how bad people's perceptions are of trans people. And doing that and humanizing yourself is so important. I would say that that's probably one of the most important things.
Yeah, Gifted 100% agree with that one.
Hey, so obviously, I think we need more awareness about anti-trans laws and get people to care. But one thing that I think is
What's
really
the
important,
difference then? What percentage? Let's see if I can find one real quick. Hold up. Let me pull up my fucking big browser so that I can actually see. Let's go to Google Scholar. I prefer not to use it. I prefer to use my fucking university shit. But, you gotta do what you gotta do when you don't want to dox yourself, Okay. Meta-analysis. Trying to find one that isn't behind a paywall, so I don't just have to read the abstract of it. So give me a second, and if I don't find one, we're gonna move on, but shit takes time, and I don't save my sources. I found one, but that's on veterans. We're not talking about veterans. No, Techie, I mentioned that social acceptance and surgeries are good options, and you want as many of those as possible to have the best outcome, which would be social acceptance and surgery. Give me the fucking full article. Oh, full article? Yes, yes, no paywall? God damn it, paywall. Well, this one says in its abstract that there are different suicide rates depending on the stage of transition. Leviticus, just because he studies it doesn't mean that he doesn't know how to, doesn't mean that he doesn't spin data. It's very easy to spin a study. That's why you look at meta-analyses, because meta-analyses are practically impossible to spin. But you can take one study and say, look, the study said it. This is why I consistently go back to meta-analyses. Alright, I found one on quality of life. Let me scroll to fucking conclusions. Bailey, do not drool on me again. You're not gonna be allowed in my studio if you drool on me again. Yeah, you're gonna cry about that? That sucks. Post-hormonal treatment. I want post-surgery treatment. Okay, well, I mean, this isn't surgery, but this is hormonal treatment, which indicates that prior to hormonal treatment, transgender people have a statistically significantly lower quality of life in terms of mental health than the cisgender population. And then following the treatment, like hormone treatment, they had the same quality of life regarding mental health as the general population. So that would indicate better. Again, it's not about surgeries, but I'm not going to dig forever right now to find that. That's just one example. That's from meta-analyses.
Examples. I mean, if you really think about this, the vast majority of people, I forget the percentage, but it was a study some years ago, the vast majority of people don't know any trans people in their life. And if they did, the chances are they'd much be more likely to accept them because it's humanizing. That's someone you know. That's someone you care about. This isn't just some boogeyman on the media. This is like real people we're talking about here. So when most people see trans people, they just see what they see in the media. And what do they see? They see a bunch of crazy people on Twitter saying all this wacky stuff about, I don't want to say specifically, but like extreme stuff that to the average person is kind of crazy, and they don't take us seriously for that. I think we have a huge problem with some of the most famous people online.
I also think I don't know who's talking, but what whoever was just talking said is super important in that most people don't know trans people. I grew up, again, super liberal area. I grew up in fucking Washington near Seattle. And so I know quite a few, and that's also because I ended up being friends with one, and then we made a bunch of mutual friends, and he was already friends with other trans people. So it's like, I know more trans people than most of the people I talk to, including all of you motherfuckers on the internet, especially you conservatives on the internet. which I think gives a very different perspective, because when you actually talk to these people and get to know these people, you understand better. So again, the one that I actually went into and could actually get the whole article of wasn't on surgery, Stacky. It was on hormones, which isn't like a second ago I wasn't on hormones and now I'm on hormones and now I suddenly feel better. Like that's not how that's not how hormonal studies work, right? Because hormones take years to have full effects, even more than that sometimes. But what it's about is before they had a higher suicide and higher mental illness rate than the rest of society, and then after they did not have that, which, I mean, to me indicates pretty well that helped. I don't know what other indicator you want that something helps. I know we were talking about surgery, but I have seen meta-analyses that follow the same guidelines. Again, I'm not going to go research the entire thing right now, but I've seen meta-analyses that follow the same trend, whereas individual studies sometimes will, sometimes won't, but the overall meta-analysis will.
It comes to trans people, or people like Christian or Jessica and Eve, and there's a ton of people who see people like that and they think that every trans person is like that, when obviously that's not the case, because there's people who want to take those people and make it seem like that is the image of trans people. They want to make that the image of trans people because they don't like us. So they need to see that trans people are just normal. They need to see people who are just the gender that they are, and that's all they are, and are just essentially women, men. I think that that's really the issue. Once you see people like that representing trans people, I think a lot of people are going to be like, oh yeah, I see that.
Powerbomb.
Will, I hope you don't mind me asking, could you repeat the question? I'm ADHD as fuck and I lost complete train of thought.
No, totally. What do you think are some effective ways that we could pass pro-trans legislation, or just increase pro-trans sentiment? Like what? Because clearly what I'm hearing from the panel, right, is that discussing whether or not there's a genocide or not is not really effective at doing what we want to actually have happen. So I'm just kind of curious, like, what do you guys think are some good options that we could do instead of maybe getting so fixated on these goofy words, right?
Yeah, I thank you. I would definitely argue that local action is definitely like one of the best ways to increase change. One thing that always comes to my mind when I think about that answer, though, is like, why aren't people more active right now? And I feel like if we're going to take the discussion in that direction, we might need to have answers for that, which personally I don't really. I think some people might say social media, other people might say like, oh, it's Gen Z and it's just the way it is. I don't know. I think local action and working on this
Fix your fucking internet, bro. I don't know whether it's Zonia or one of these other motherfuckers, but fix your internet. Jesus Christ.
And extra activism. I think that those are like things that we need to consider when we say that local action is the best route to go. I still think it is. I also agree with the aspect of humanizing yourself, for people who might not disagree. This is one reason why I think we should really take advantage of the fact that this discourse is not really as polarized as it could be. There are still plenty of libertarians or moderate conservatives who will nitpick the issue of children transitioning, something which I disagree with them on, but they will respect you as an adult, as a trans person, to a certain extent. Like there is more of a gradient on that matter right now.
Thank you for
like,
saying that part.
Like I guess if you get what I'm saying, like it could be way more black and white for a lot of people. Right now, the fact that people are more willing to
at the very least we can agree on that.
They're more willing to talk to like some trans people and stuff. I think that's something that we should definitely capitalize on and kind of reach out of our personal bubbles or our personal echo chambers to try and reach new audiences and new people to have those discussions, whether online or in real life. I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah.
I think that's fine. Alexander.
Okay.
I mean, like, I really appreciate the fact that there is a growing number of people who support trans people. Like, that's great. The material reality is that this country is ruled by a Christo-fascist minority, which has introduced a national Don't Say Gay bill that includes things like, we will take away funding from state hospitals that do gender-affirming care.
Yeah,
like, literally,
like
and who the fuck?
Shit. I'm fine with adults only. I don't, like, necessarily agree with it, and I wouldn't push for adult-only surgeries, but, like, it's not something I have a problem with.
Knows if it will. I mean, probably not with the veto, I guess. They don't have the majority required. Like, they're going to keep trying, and they're going to probably get a Republican president again relatively soon. Like I just don't know how to be effective, legally speaking. And like, I don't know anymore if that's like my primary concern. Like, changing people's minds and then they'll vote differently is maybe more where my concern lies. And like, I don't think anybody necessarily like addressed this directly earlier. Like, if you think the word genocide is too charged, like, but I can demonstrate that the state is enacting, or at least attempting to enact policies, and not just attempting to enact policies, but not extrajudiciously, that's not the right word, but like going outside of the legislative process, using executive powers
for sure. I definitely do. It's not one that I would push for. Granted, I probably wouldn't push either way. Like, I wouldn't go like advocate for either side of it, because I don't care all that much regarding surgeries.
Enact their laws when the laws fail to pass through the legislative body. Like, I don't know that that's like the most worthy consideration for our time to be spending. Like, yeah, vote.
Techie, you already said that
Try
you
it out.
wanted to make it
we've been doing that for a while. I'm not sure that's working. I don't necessarily have like
that back
a
and
full body of
it.
other ways that we should be going. But like, I just am focused more on like, we should be calling things as they are. Like, I don't think that it benefits us to soften our language when the material reality is that these policies are going to result in deaths. Like, it's just very clear.
So
okay,
there's a problem I see.
Hold on, Sonia. I can't have Johnny Scarlet get cut out for like another 20 minutes like we did last time. So let's have Johnny
I agree with Johnny Scarlet that we should be
up.
positive as well. We can do both. I think we can do both, and I want to acknowledge. I really appreciate your point on that. We should be acknowledging the strides that we've made, but I also think that this is a very scary time.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
That was all. I just want to say.
And people can walk back things, but Techie was very staunch on this and has not explained a difference there, because he said it was his personal opinion that it shouldn't be allowed. Not that he doesn't like it. He said that it was his personal opinion that it shouldn't be allowed.
Me?
Yeah, just go ahead and I'll say my piece after.
Yeah, so I would say, like Lux, multiple people here have stated that like voting isn't what they're talking about. They're talking about direct action. They're talking about, protesting, pushing back against legislators, calling legislators, harassing them to let them know, don't vote on this. And there's more than just voting. Like, a lot of people, I think, kind of boil things down to voting, but voting only happens at certain intervals, right? Voting is like a fraction of the power that you have as a citizen of a democracy, right? There's so much more to it than voting. Voting is a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction. So like, what we're talking about here is we're talking about actually utilizing our voices, utilizing our bodies, taking action, pushing back, telling our representatives who are supposed to represent us, hey, fuck you, asshole, don't vote on this thing. You report to me, motherfucker. I pay your fucking bill, your tax. I pay taxes for your ass. I'm the one who puts money in your fucking pocket. I'm the one who puts food on your fucking table. You will listen to me, motherfucker. Don't vote on this shit. Call them, harass them, email them, show up at their offices, fuck with their free time, fuck with their peace of mind. There's so much more that you can do than just voting. And so this whole thing of like boiling everything down to voting is like this ridiculous thing that both like, more sort of the, anti-establishment types do, as well as the pro-establishment types do. They're like, voting is so important. Yeah, voting is important, but voting is still a fraction of what you do when you are a member of a democracy. And so I think that's a really important thing to pay attention to and to call out. And I get that you're kind of signaling toward, well, the system is broken and it's authoritarian and we can't do much about it, so we need to go outside of the system without saying we need to go outside of the system. I get that. But I don't think that we're at the point where we need to basically just give up and admit failure of the system and say that there's no hope with it at all and that we should never do anything within the system and we should just go exclusively outside the system. So I would hope that you would also agree that there is a mix of things that we can do within the system and along your road, outside the system, obviously, right? I would hope you would agree that there's a mix of that, right?
I was using vote as shorthand. Like, I wanted to highlight that I myself just emailed my senator this week. Like, I have 2 minutes to respond or whatever. Like, I'm using vote as a catch-all for operating within the system. Like, I just don't see the current activities as being very effective. It just doesn't seem like we're getting very far, especially like, it just seems like.
Yes, it shouldn't be, in my personal opinion, but that's different than actually enforcing this kind of law. Well, I have my reasons on questioning when that autonomy is in the right of mind. That's my own judgment, not everyone's. I'm not the smartest person in the room. Okay, whatever. Sounded like earlier that was very different. It sounds like that is very different than what you were saying earlier, but I'm not going to push it.
The conditions are worsening. And it's not just the political, like literally the laws. Like, that's the other aspect of this that I don't think anybody has acknowledged so far, is the stochastic terrorism aspect, where a bunch of gay and trans people like got shot in a nightclub very recently. And the response to that from the conservatives was a very resounding, you deserved it, you fucking groomers. Like it's not just the laws. When we're talking about genocidal intent toward our people, we're talking about on the ground deaths, people dying on the sidewalk because the Salvation Army wouldn't let them sleep with the women. Like, this has been ongoing for years.
So I got two things to say real quick. I posted in the panel
the system
chat,
has failed. Go outside the system.
There's a testimony of an organization that basically was able to get 130,000 letters sent, which I don't want to like waste time with the details, but basically they sent 130,000 comments to be submitted to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, condemning a proposal made by Donald Trump, reinterpreting the Affordable Care Act's non-discrimination provisions for trans people. This slowed down the rulemaking process, and on August 17, 2020, one day before the rule change to go into effect, a federal judge blocked the rule. So there is. There, granted, with my research, this is the only link I was able to find. This is the only link I did find that shows that there is
full memes.
Hope
am I
that
going to
you
do full
can
memes?
create change within the system. Second of all, shoot, give me a second. I'm so sorry, Lex. You said something I was going to respond to, and it's currently slipping my mind, so I apologize about that. But I'll try and get to it when I.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
I'm gonna have Johnny Scarlet go.
Can we just get a quick confirmation though?
You're not allowed to forget things, bro.
So you're saying the system has completely failed. There's no point in utilizing the system at all. All actions should be outside the system. Because I was asking if you agreed that there's a mix of those. Like, there's plenty of things within the system that we can do to affect that change. But what you said at the end almost sounded like, even though yes, you contacted your representative, you almost basically said at the end, it doesn't matter anyway because it doesn't affect anything. So I felt like you kind of dodged that one.
Sorry, I feel like I may have communicated very ineffectively because you've come away with the opposite of what I intended to convey, which is that, like, I don't think that you should stop voting or contacting your representatives or accosting them at diners. That's, that's like a good thing to do. I just also, like, I really, like, comparing our struggle to the civil rights struggle is like, gauche. Like, realistically, how many years have Black people been trying to get, like, the government to stop killing their people on the street, Judge Dredd style, and yet it's still happening? Like how much observable history needs to continue in this system before we acknowledge that it isn't working? I just don't think that.
I mean, at least she's acknowledging that it's not a different situation than any other minority group, I guess. But she's still calling it a genocide, so what the fuck?
Like, if truly the overall sentiment across our country is overwhelmingly trans positive or queer positive or whatever, like, that's really not being reflected by our government. Do you think that the positive sentiment amongst the populace is being accurately reflected by our representatives?
Yes.
I don't think a few legislations is enough. I don't think a few anti-trans legislations is enough to say that the entire.
How many laws need to be produced before it's a problem?
Well, I think it depends on your representatives, right? So yes,
it's going to be
like
state by state.
Here in California,
in every example. It's going to be state by state, almost every example.
So that's the problem. You can't say across the country. Now it's a mix. But anyway, sorry for interrupting you twice, Johnny. I really apologize. I just really want to kind of firm that one up.
It's okay. So, something that I've been struggling with personally and that I would like to do more advocacy for is the fact that I've been trying to get on testosterone for approximately 2 years. I live in Louisiana. Most of my chatters know that, so not doxing myself or anything. But as far as I can tell, the sentiment in Louisiana is not widely political. It is something that has more to do with the attitude of actual healthcare providers. This is a real problem for me personally, because I don't just consider myself non-binary. I
push back on the civil rights thing.
I would like to transition into a more masculine body, and I would like to have more of a discourse with more healthcare providers and help them become more educated, not just about how to treat trans patients when and if they come up, but how to actually know that someone is serious about this and to take them seriously. I'm not entirely sure how to do that. This is something that it's a journey I'm going to be on for a little while now, and I have considered moving outside.
That's the issue. That is the issue, is that these people are advocating for things that they don't know how to do. And then they go out and call things that aren't genocides, and then they go, why do people not like what we said? Crazy.
The state in order to rectify it for myself. But that doesn't change anything on the grassroots arena. And I want to echo Malcolm there, like, the ability to actually change the real tangible lives of trans people and queer people is primarily grassroots. It involves
Techie, the end of that statement is better than the rest of it.
What I'm curious about is, if we use the term genocide, does it really, at the end of the day, change our praxis? Because to me, I guess what I'm hearing, I guess, from Luxander is that if we're
Johnny
in a
has
state
been
of genocide,
trying to get on T for 2 years now, something like
there
that.
are different actions that maybe we can take versus if we're not in the middle of a genocide. Is that?
I think it changes. I don't think it changes a lot of praxis to use a specific word.
Certainly, since
if we're all of the opinion and of the
I got you now.
That we are actually.
I didn't get you at the time.
The inability to get health care and the inability to get mental health care, the actual pathway to changing that doesn't really, it's not affected by the semantics, in my opinion.
Like, if I say,
I swear to God, if you start barking, we're going to have an issue.
Does that, what actions am I allowed to take to now stop the trans genocide?
Yeah, do I finally get to shoot people now?
Anyone can. I'm curious.
Yeah,
I don't finally get to shoot people. What the fuck's on you?
A certain level of action, I think, where if the words that we use, like, are semantic and important at the same time. And I think it's really interesting because for a really long time we were all kind of, at least as people on the left, I assume that everybody here is like somewhat on the left. The idea of kind of using different language to describe certain kinds of oppression that people face, like, for example, racism versus systemic racism versus microaggressions. Like, all of these really specific words are really important to be able to identify what the issue is that we're attacking. Because if somebody is like a card-carrying KKK member, that's going to elevate, like, my response to them being racist, versus if it's like a 90-year-old grandma who, like, I don't know, was like, can I touch your hair, to somebody who's not white. These are going to require different responses, right? I'm not going to, like, axe kick the grandma in the face. And so I think if we're talking about trans genocide, the
way
that we talk about it is going to be really relevant in the words that we use. Like, I agree to the extent that, like, if we are being genocided, it doesn't matter what the fuck we call it, it's too late, we're already dead, right? But in the context of us being able to communicate this level of urgency to others, I think that accuracy is important in conveying our current situation to other people that demands a certain level of urgency. And I don't know if in every state we are at that level of urgency. I think in some states you could argue that we are, but I would not say that it's like a universal thing in America right now, at least.
So I know, like, what I would say, if sorry, I know I've been dominating the conversation,
Shut the fuck up, Sonia.
So this is what I would do if I felt that I could genuinely argue definitively that there's a genocide and that there was overall just, it was pretty obvious that there's a genocide going on. This is what I would do.
Bailey,
I would be going
down.
to places like Human Rights Watch, and I would be petitioning them and saying, look, we need people to speak out to other countries and to the UN about this genocide being enacted by the US against the trans population, because that's how the origin of the term genocide started. It was actually intended to be used as a goad against or toward other countries that are enacting or have enacted a genocide, to put pressure for countries or coalitions of countries to put pressure on another country who is genociding a people with.
I mean, yeah, it was actually just made to describe the situation, and yeah, it was intended to be used as a way of saying, hey, don't let people do this, but it still was just made as a descriptive word.
In its borders. And so the weight of that word motivates coalitions of countries to take that kind of action and put pressure on another country to say, for instance, because Human Rights Watch was petitioning the UN to get them to amend Article 2 to recognize what China is doing to the Uyghurs as a genocide. And so that's what these organizations do. They go and they petition the UN and other country coalitions, as well as individual countries, and petition them to say, we think that this is a genocide and that you should recognize it. Multiple countries stood up and recognized what China was doing as a genocide targeting the Uyghur people. The UN did not recognize it, but many other countries did. So that's what these organizations do, and that's what I would do if I felt that I could truly argue that it is definitively a genocide. I would be going and petitioning these human rights organizations to do presentations in other countries before our country representatives and before country coalitions to get various countries to recognize what the US is doing as a genocide targeting us. That's what I would do.
Let's have Powerbomb go. I'm curious if who else on the panel has an opinion.
I think that you would get laughed at, and you would deservedly get laughed at for doing that.
I think we should also talk about how the government is able to restrict an individual's access to medical help is really scary, even for cis people. I don't think that you need to completely abandon the concerns regarding like medical discrimination for trans people. I think that this could possibly be a very effective narrative to get cis people on your side. You don't want the government overstepping boundaries, telling you what you can and can't do medically to your body. Ironically, that is a similar thing with the Roe v. Wade decision that happened recently. I think it's to get cis people on your side, especially because you need the majority of people on your side in order to like make any impactful change. You should probably mention that I think the government's boundaries when it comes to medical decisions should pretty much be to make sure that the doctor doesn't take advantage of you or kill you. If it doesn't actually negatively impact you in any way, and the doctor is not taking advantage of you in any way, I don't think that the government should have very much of a right to tell you what you can and can't do. The fact that they're trying to do that with some of this anti-trans legislation, I think would be a much more effective line of logic to try and get cis people on your side versus using alarmist rhetoric to try and get them to empathize with somebody that they probably don't even know or have never met in their life. If a genocide is happening right now, I would have very few boundaries regarding what to do about that. The thing that I'm always curious about, and I don't necessarily have an answer to this, is why aren't we doing anything about it? If there are people who think there's a genocide happening, and in situations where there have been genocides that have happened, why aren't people doing anything about it? And I feel like that would be a very interesting discussion to have as well.
I mean, it's more so that everyone who says that there's a genocide happening doesn't do shit about it, so it makes me think that they...
The purpose of using the phrase genocide,
or
again,
don't actually believe in
that specific word, people shutting down, I think it's still important to acknowledge and drive home rhetorically that these policies are aimed at and have demonstrable intent toward reducing the number of trans people, and that they will hurt other groups. Obviously, the bathroom laws, overwhelmingly trans women don't go into the bathroom unless they're pretty sure they're going to pass. So the women who get hurt by that are generally going to be cis women who are butch or older and have gone through menopause or whatever. Using the alarmist rhetoric does change the proportion of the response. And I specifically think that that's important because in the ramp up toward a genocide, there is a tendency toward complacency. I've used this rhetoric multiple times, Jewish people were pulled out of their homes because they still felt safe in their homes. And I also want to acknowledge that trans people were holocausted, literally. We were holocausted during the Holocaust. So you can look at Nazi rhetoric about homosexuality and transsexuality and draw a literal straight line between Holocaust of Jewish and Romani.
Yeah, and so are political groups, and so are disabled people. That wasn't the focus of it.
And gay and trans people during World War II. And now where the same things are happening. I think that, especially since Biden has been put into office after Trump, there is an enormous amount of let's go back to brunch type rhetoric. And I think that's dangerous. The moderate is dangerous. We all are familiar with MLK. The moderate is a danger to you. So I do think that, again, if we think that it's rhetorically not effective, I am more on the side of just demonstrating the fact of the matter rather than trying to step down off of the actual
Some people are just idiots.
And say I guess I won't call it genocidal intent. I guess I'll just say they really want there to be no more trans people, and they're doing everything they can legislatively and also egging on their constituents to use the Second Amendment right to protect their kids from groomers.
They're just idiots.
Against this, since you're responding to me, if that's okay with you, Will.
I was trying to address the overall question that Will had put forward of what is the rhetorical use, and then I guess the second part of the question is what is acceptable to do. Is that correct? Is that, Will, what your question was? The two-parter of what do we do if there's a genocide, right?
Yeah.
Like at that point, like I can't, for TOS reasons, like advocate specifically for a lot of things, like because I mean, for me, I'm disabled and I'm trans, and I'm gonna just get the fuck out of here. Like I have a 16-year-old trans brother who lives in Missouri, which is taking a second pass at trying to make it illegal for him to access medical care. Like because of the fact that I have to consider doing illegal actions in order to maintain his medical care, we have to get the fuck out. So like what the justifiable actions are against the type of people who are supporting the genocidal intent. Like
appreciates
I can't
you using her
say that I
emote.
would do anything.
She's kind of
against
mad
them.
at me.
I can't say that I would.
Because
I think
told
that
her
my
to go
instinct
lay
is just to
down when
leave,
she wanted
and that's my
pets.
answer to the two-parter.
Really
She
quickly, I think that
appreciates
if we
the
all
emote.
agree that there is a genocide happening, I would hope and I would pray, and I'm going to assume safely that everybody here would say that nothing is off of the table. That if there was like an active genocide happening right now, that it would be like fucking no holds barred. Like we're gonna do whatever we have to do to make sure that people aren't getting like taken and killed. And this was something that I had thought of earlier, but I just tucked it under the rug. I think the thing that is hard with that rhetoric, Luxator, is that if we we agree, right? If this was the instance that we were at, we would all be on that level with you. I think the problem is that in stating that, a lot of that begs that we rise with you to your understanding of this, even if some of us don't agree with that, right? Because I think again, we all agree that if it was genocide, it's like yeah, like let's burn it all down, like fuck this place, whatever. But that requires us to elevate to your understanding, and I think that's where there's that disconnect where it's like people are feeling like you're being alarmist or like invoking like the system isn't enough. I think that's where that disconnect is, just from sitting from my little perch over here listening to you and Zonia talk about it. That's all.
Also, I don't think you can say alarmist rhetoric has done good and then also argue at the same time that not much has improved for trans people. At the same time, like I also think, yeah, maybe alarmist rhetoric has had an impact, but
damn.
Probably
fix your fucking internet, bro.
This
shit bothers me. Get good internet if you're gonna go on panels and stuff.
You were kind of breaking up a lot there. I just want to clarify that I don't
knowledge.
think I said that, or at least if I did say, I didn't intend for it to come across that I'm saying alarmist rhetoric has done good. What I'm saying is that we are dramatic, like in every instance in which a genocidal intent has occurred, like including in the Nazi Germany, we have not been even remotely alarmist enough. It's impossible to say whether the rhetoric has done good because we're not being alarmist enough in either case.
Yeah, I think we should probably ask why that is instead of just assuming that it's because we were not freaking out enough. But sorry, go ahead, Zonia.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think so you mentioned that if you can say that it's genocide, that changes the proportion of the response. And I get that, what you've been saying, you're saying there are things that you would like to say or could say that you can't say because of TOS issues. And I get that. But I think we all understand what you mean, right? Like I'm very much a Second Amendment person, right? Even here in liberal California. And I know exactly what I would do, if people were trying to take away my livelihood, right? Obviously I can't give specifics, TOS. But the problem I see is that there's sort of
Zonia just continuously draws the line on TOS.
The problem is that a lot of what you say comes off as sort of like giving up.
She just
right? Without,
toes
if
that
you can't
line
advocate
so
for
close.
what you would do, the message that comes out in the clean TOS fashion is the system is broken, it has failed, we just need to give up. There's nothing we can do to solve it. But we want this one magical word that somehow changes things. And there's a problem with that. That doesn't really, that just kind of, like, I get what you're saying about leaving Kansas, I think you said you were in, but not everybody can even leave Kansas. Like, leaving is a luxury in a way, right? Fleeing a state is actually a luxury that a lot of people just don't have. I'm hailing back to Ben Shapiro saying, just move, right?
This is semi-true.
We don't really have, that isn't the prescription.
But it is possible if you want to put in the effort and if you have to, and if you are willing to make sacrifices for that, which again, everything that you do in life is going to have sacrifices. So yes, it is possible. Take a drink every time you hear TOS. I don't even have a drink tonight, bro. I'm being a good fucking child of God tonight.
That we can give to people. There has to be other means to solve this problem. And I don't think we're at the point of just giving up entirely and going to, like, resorting to banditry, and everybody pulling together in bandit, camps and stuff like that. I don't think that's realistic. I think that's kind of a cartoonish look at the whole thing. I don't mean to say that your views are cartoonish, but it comes off that way when you don't have anything to offer that is some kind of other prescription to address these issues. So
becoming a refugee is not the luxury position. Like, I just want to be clear that when I'm
moving is a luxury, absolutely. Moving is a luxury that a lot of people don't have.
Selling everything you own to escape persecution in your home country is not a luxury. Like that, like when I say,
it's
like
more of a luxury
when
I'm killed there.
If you think people could just pack up and leave, they can't. That's a luxury by definition.
Bailey.
When Ben Shapiro says, "Hey, you people in Florida where it's drowning, just
hold up, one sec." She's very jumpy today. I don't know why. She's been like barking at every little sound she hears. It's kind of annoying. Okay, which is better? A breakthrough happens that cures gender dysphoria somehow, as in the person no longer hates themselves or their body, which doesn't mean they'll stop liking feminine things or masculine things, or the continuation of surgery and hormone treatment in spite of that. I mean, if that breakthrough happens, using that breakthrough. Right, but I wouldn't like stop surgeries and stuff prior to any breakthrough like that. What's wrong with my puppers? She's just fucking jumpy. She goes through phases of being a very good apartment dog and then just not. And I think today is one of those not phases.
Sell your houses and move. We all know what he's talking about there. That's unrealistic. That doesn't actually work.
You know that people come to this country with like backpacks and the clothes on their back and that's all. Like that's the situation that I feel that we're about to be in. Like I'm not saying like move to, I'm not saying emigrate to Ireland because your mom has citizenship there. We already have a refugee situation happening in this country. When we're talking about grassroots, like I agree with you all when you say grassroots, like we need to actually make change. How about the GoFundMes of families who are fleeing persecution in their home states where their children are threatened to be taken away from them, going to California and Minnesota where there are now sanctuary laws? Like, yeah, it's not every single state, but it is like a problem happening within the entire country. Like there are sanctuary states for United States refugees within the United States already today as we speak.
I would absolutely welcome you here and everybody else here, but the reality is, even though you may make it out, there are a lot of people who won't make it out. There are a lot of people, there are disabled people who have difficulty just getting up and moving. I'm physically disabled. I have
Underground Railroad.
living. So there have to be other options. Like it can't just be flee the red states. There have to be other options than that. Fleeing the red states is unrealistic.
It could be living somewhere among people who agree with you versus living among people who don't agree with you. I feel like that's, it's not all of the reason for interstate moving, but I feel like that is definitely a decent part of it. It's not because that's what your gender store does, you dislike your body and wish to change it. It's not dislike, it is, it's you don't identify with it. Like it doesn't match what your brain says that you should have. That's basically what it is. So you can be fine with your body, but just not like that it's your body, you know? If that makes any sense.
Some people will be able to flee the red states. Most of those people are people who have some kind of means or have family in other states or people who can assist them, etc. But overall, you're talking about a large swath of very wide open territory that would be very difficult to create an underground railroad for. Keep in mind, underground railroad didn't solve the problem for even 60% of the slaves, right? So keep that in mind. It only worked for a fraction. So there has to be another option. The problem is that the way that I see you presenting them, these seem like very overly simplistic answers to complicated problems. And I think there are on-the-ground solutions that we could do to resolve issues and ease the oppression in those states, as opposed to just coming up with this unrealistic, everybody leave the state right now solution that didn't even work for the slaves originally, only worked for a fraction of them. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, I'm not saying that
Lux respond, but then I want to see if Johnny Scarlet or Rose would like to get in. Go for it, Lux.
There are a number of different approaches to take to this problem. When you are a member of a persecuted minority, I don't think that it's necessarily our responsibility to take it upon ourselves to try to fix things. We should be doing those things. Like, even if I leave this country, I'm still going to vote in the presidential elections. Like, I'm still going to be paying taxes to this country. And like, my thing is like, okay, yeah, there do need to be a plethora of different approaches.
What?
I don't see anyone else.
Ma'am, do you know what leaving the country is?
Proposing like a range of different options. Like I'm the only one who's saying like leaving is probably a good idea. Even I obviously, like, I acknowledge that there are a number of different things that we could be doing, like, as my...
You know, I don't pay attention that much to international trans, like, laws and stuff, but what I will say is that abortion laws, for example, are actually more liberal, even in a lot of red states in the United States, than in places like Europe. And the liberals don't like to pay attention to that, and nor do the Europeans. But I would be scared, like, if she's planning on leaving the U.S. to try to avoid this situation, what are you going to? And is it actually better, or do you just think it's better because it's not America? Oh, what trans genocide? Exactly. I 100% agree with you, buddy. Anyways, because you're new here, where are you from? What are your general political views? Welcome in.
A physically and mentally disabled trans person with, vulnerable younger family members, like, I would love it if I could do more actual grassroots action. I would love it if owning a gun wasn't a personal danger to me. I think that it's important for people who are like you and I in positions where we can't really protect ourselves if it comes to our physical health and safety. Like I won't go to a gay club. I won't. I live in a place where mass shootings are not very common, and I won't go to a gay club because the risk of dying is significant enough that I'm like the terrorists are winning in my life, right? Like, and maybe this is like I have like a history with trauma, and so my responses are informed by a certain amount of vigilance and awareness. Like I will not be caught slipping. That's how I personally feel. I will not be caught. If they come for me dragging me out of my bed, at least I will have known that I stayed too long. Like, at least I will have known the day before that was a possibility.
I know, like, for here in some of the stuff that I've done work with, not specifically for the LGBT community,
I feel like you're
just
kind of a pussy.
Community as well.
Like,
we have groups that get together.
You've gotten caught into fear mongering, and now you're scared of everything. I feel like that's more so what that situation was.
That do mutual aid. We have volunteer doctors who assist on their time off and such. There are people who go out of their way to spend time to provide their expertise and provide healthcare, provide medicines and stuff like that. Those are things that can be done. NGOs can get involved as well. There's a lot of different things that can be done to help ameliorate and lessen the conditions that trans people face in certain states.
Ameliorate.
So we don't just have to throw our hands up and say, everybody leave the state now, and whoever's left behind, fuck you. We don't have to do that. And it's a very and again, I would say it's too much of a, let's just give up kind of answer. And it's unrealistic. We need to do something to address those issues in those states. Mutual aid is probably one of the best ways to do that, I would say. I would hope that you'd agree at least to some of that.
Mutual aid to what? Okay, Will, you were going to move us on.
Yeah. Johnny Scarlet or Rosemary.
All right. Fuck you, Will.
I guess they just ignored everything I said.
I already live in a state of what I think it would be like if people were literally coming to trans people's doors and outing them. I already live in a state of constantly hiding who I am. I have to go by my dead name at jobs. I have in the past explicitly told myself, okay, I can't get on testosterone because then I'll be too visible. I've been rejected from getting jobs because I introduced myself as Johnny, or because I dressed a little bit too butch that day and they happened to clock me. And I want to acknowledge that there's like a lot of people.
Did you go seek legal action? Did you do that? Yes, no, maybe so. Probably not. Yeah, Techie, but what we're saying is that it's not necessarily that you hate your body, it's that you are not aligned with your body. So like there's trans people who are like, yeah, if I was, let's talk about a trans girl. So if I was a trans person would say, if I was a guy, I'd be fucking hot, but I'm not, so I don't want this body. Like that is a sentiment that can happen. It's not that you hate your body, it's that you don't want your body. Obviously, again, sometimes that also goes in line with hate your body, but not always. That's all we're saying.
Who will be in the position like I am, where they can't just move out of a state and they'll have to go into a state of hiding the fact that they are trans. And that is, in fact, part of the cultural genocide that I was alluding to earlier. The idea
you want some hot Cheetos? You sound like fucking culture that we can't
actively, openly be queer. Like that's it hits very close to home for me, I'll say.
All right. Can I?
Yep.
All right. So first of all, I just want to say my own personal experience, right? I live in Arizona. It's not the most progressive state in the country. And, we're one of the few red cities in the big country. First of all, my experience is this. When I was younger, the big trans clinic I went to closed down. I had to take a flight to LA sometimes in order to get my blocker shot, right? Now I understand a lot of people are not in the position where they can just buy a plane ticket to another state every 3 months. That's not something that a lot of people can do. And so, it does suck. The problem is that when you're talking about leaving, when you're talking about moving, this isn't something that's really feasible. And I think it's a good idea. I think it's a great idea if it's possible, but it's a big ask. I mean, you have a bunch of friends and family that live there, and you're just supposed to say goodbye to them. And like I said, places like California, the cost of living is a lot higher. Even if you can't afford that, your standard of living is going down. And if you're under 18, like what are you supposed to do? Convince your parents?
Good luck. Unrealistic.
Being like, hey, my state's not trans supportive enough. Let's move to another state. And maybe your parents have to find different jobs and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, when you're under 18, suck it up. If you're over 18, make the changes for yourself.
I understand the sentiments. It's just when it comes to practicalities, there's just so many things to consider.
I don't know about this necessarily. I don't know if there was a genocide happening in a state, telling everybody that is currently undergoing the genocide to leave the state. Seems like a pretty big ad.
Yeah, it really sucks to have to give up your home because you're rich.
I saw it. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I saw it, but I did.
Risk of having your children stolen from you by the state is so great. It's I'm not saying it's cute. I'm not saying it's fun. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not excited. I'm not happy about it. I have imagined owning a home in my home state, and I'm like, oh, what would be really great is to plant a bunch of native grasses there. And I was thinking about it recently, and I was like, if I ever buy a house,
you too, Bez. Don't worry.
If I planted those same grasses in that place, they wouldn't be native grasses. And it fucking sucked. It was a horrible moment for me to have to recognize that if I wanted to build a life, it would have to be somewhere not where I grew up. I didn't ever think that I was super attached to where I lived until the prospect came upon me that I might have no choice but to leave because it's not safe for me and my family to be here.
I think
I'm not saying I want it to be there.
The same thing as being rounded up into a camp, though, or being like exterminated by the state.
Is that the point that it has to be at? Like, is that where? I'm sorry. Like a couple of times, several people on this panel have.
A genocide is the state or a terrorist group enacting violence with the intent of eradicating a group of people. I think in order to be considered a genocide, you probably need to be getting eradicated for that to happen.
So if you enact policies that enable people to starve to death, is that not like a genocidal policy? Like if you have policies that make a certain group of people not have enough money to buy food, but you're not literally killing them, is that not like you're like, because part of the definition is creating unlivable circumstances for the group? Like
it depends on how you do that.
But
in most of this person's definitions of that, I'd probably say no, because this person probably has idiotic definitions
people
of that.
genocided in this country.
I feel like we're getting into real sticky territory if we start asking that question.
Just a yes or no. Just a quick yes or no. That's all that you need, Alexander. Bloody white.
Don't answer it. Don't answer it.
Answer it.
Don't answer it. Don't answer it.
Do it. Don't listen to Zonia.
As an attorney, I say I advise him to
brother. Trans men unite. Trans men unite.
I'm sorry. I think that's a very vague and stupid fucking question. If you.
All right.
What a perfect time to cut out. Oh, that sucks. Okay. Pussy shit.
Do we think terms or phrases like ethnocide, cultural genocide, etc.
Hey, Nintendo Daisy, how you doing?
I mean, you can still use logic and reasoning and also use empathy at the same time, Techie.
Have any value in the current discourse? And if so,
no.
what words do you
Not
like
mutually
to use,
exclusive.
and why do you like to use them instead of genocide?
Because genocide is a trigger word, and it sets everybody
Yeah, we're
off.
gonna start with Malcolm.
Yes.
Is that the only reason though?
Well, a big part of it, again, like I was talking about earlier, is that the reason that we have like specific words to like describe specific things is to communicate what we're experiencing clearly, so people can respond appropriately with the right amount of force, right? If I call 911 and I say somebody's murdering me right fucking now, and it's my mom taking away my Xbox, the police are gonna come in and kill my mom. That level of response is not communicated. It is not effective for me to use such like loaded language to get a response that I want. And we understand this with literally everything else. I don't know why everybody's
been here from the beginning.
When we're talking about this. If we're talking about racism, individual interpersonal racism, systemic
I didn't even realize.
systemic oppression, microaggressions, all of these things are going to be different. Even as trans people here, we all know that we don't all immediately fit under the label of trans. Like, I'm a trans man. I'm not the same as Zonia. I'm not the same as Rose. I like the word trans man. Do you guys like the word trans woman or whatever? Alexander likes the word non-binary. Johnny Scarlett likes the word non-binary, right? Like these kinds of specifics in language provoke a certain response that we want. And the whole point of that is that we have a desired outcome that we want. And if our desired outcome is for everybody to go fucking rogue and roam the streets with their trans painted fucking AR-15s just fucking murdering people because we want to trick everybody into thinking that we're being executed in the streets right now, that's going to be the outcome that we get, and it's going to backfire really fucking hard. The point of using language is to demand a specific response and conjure a specific image in people's mind. And love it or hate it, genocide is tainted. Everybody thinks about Schindler's List. Everybody thinks about the Holocaust. Everybody thinks about, World War II, Nazi Germany. It's gone. It's done. We have to pick another word. We have to be more specific with our language because everybody's brains will just power down the second that we say it. And that's all.
I'd say, why do we even need a word?
And also, it's just straight up inaccurate. But yes.
I had not personally, and I realize this because I haven't been terminally online for the past year or so, but I had not personally heard the term transgenocide until a few months ago. And so in the personal advocacy that I do in being somewhat of a queer elder in my community, I know I'm not that old, but we don't have a lot of open gay people out here. I address systemic oppression with the word systemic oppression. I address microaggression with the word microaggression. And I don't really have a catch-all for all of these things. I think that it's been said pretty clearly on this panel up to this point that this is I think Zonia said it really perfectly a little while ago. This is a wide range of issues that are going on. So when I talk about my lack of access to medical care, I talk about medical care. Like there's not a good catch-all word.
Rosemary.
Yeah, so I think using buzzwords like this can actually be harmful. I think we need a good example of that, right? Like think about the
So
word.
does she think the catch-all word is?
You could use this exact same argument. You could literally say, "Oh, this is what this is," and explain the concept to somebody without using those words, and they'll be a lot more receptive because they don't have that stigma attached to it. They don't have, people feeding in their ear, "This thing is bad," or "I should listen because they said this thing." When you explain the concept in a way that makes sense to them without using the buzzwords that they already have emotions tied to, I think you'll find that people who aren't, in your corner, in your echo chamber, are much more likely to listen. Maybe they won't fully understand, maybe they won't fully agree, but I think there is a little bit that helps from that.
Can you clarify what you mean by do you disapprove of do you disapprove with all of the words that I listed, including genocide, being used to describe?
I do. I just don't think that it's really helpful to use them. And I'd love to hear arguments against this as to why we should use those words, but I just don't see how, if I'm talking to an average normal person, how using this word is going to help me in any way. How is that going to convince them? I just don't see it personally. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see it.
Let's have power bottom politics go.
Give me 1 second. I think the more terms that you use, the more complicated it gets for regular people to be able to understand what you're talking about. I think the more that you try and wrap up concepts into terms instead of just explaining them to people in regular language, it gets more difficult for them to follow along and take you seriously. If I were to go to somebody and talk to them about the cultural trans side of the marginalized non-binary groups of different trans people and all that. Sorry, no shade to anybody. I'm just saying that the more words that you use that are maybe they may be common in our spaces, but in the general population, they're not very common. I think it just turns people off and makes them glaze over.
Let's have Zonia, and then we'll have Alexander go.
So I would say, why do we even have to handcuff ourselves to one word? right? That doesn't make a lot of sense. Think about just the fact that the representation of trans people we have on this panel. We can't even all mutually agree on any one thing anywhere. It's not like we're a monolith just because we happen to be trans doesn't mean we all suddenly fully line up in lockstep with our views on trans issues, on what is affecting trans people, on what constitutes trans, right? There's so many disagreements, so many different views, so many different perspectives. We're a very colorful lot. So why would we even handcuff ourselves to one word? We're never going to have mutual agreement on any one word. We're never going to have a collective uniting behind one word. That's just not going to happen. So it doesn't make any sense to even bother trying to say, well, what word should all the trans people use? We don't even have like a committee of people that hands down to the rest of the trans community, here is your word to explain your oppression, right? These things don't exist. So I would say, why don't we instead find ways to describe the individual issues that affect us?
I agree, 15.
And we're going to have different ways of describing it. Some of us are going to use certain words, and some of us won't use those words. I think that's okay. I think that's just fine.
So Alexander, answer, and then I have a question from the chat.
So something that I have consistently been hoping for in the course of this conversation is some concrete alternatives to describe the situation that we're dealing with. Like Malcolm dropped out. I wonder if his internet poo-pooed or something. No, he said he was going to need to drop out after a certain point. So Malcolm made this like, I think more than anyone else has made like an allusion to something that we should be doing instead. Like what I'm hearing is a lot of no, you shouldn't say genocide from everybody on this panel, and not a lot of here's how we can accurately describe specifically the material conditions of death that we're experiencing in like a constructive way. Like I'm mostly not really hearing any alternatives even being proposed that I could potentially consider.
Yeah, exactly. You just describe what's actually happening rather than just saying it's a genocide when it's not.
Like again, I'm not intending to be alarmist. Like I do think that you should be alarmed with what the situation is as it's described. Like I've made the video. I can't go through it like point by point in this debate panel, like because this is not a TED Talk, but like I can demonstrate to you every single step up to step fucking 8 on like the genocide scale. And like again, like those things are not necessarily prescribed to happen in a certain order or anything, but I can demonstrate all of them. And no one has really offered an alternative. Like, yeah, like if you like again, if rhetorically you think that the word genocide is ineffective, even if it's 100% accurate, I would like to be able to at least consider some alternatives.
So the problem I see is that you're basically trying to say that the word genocide somehow translates to the average person and tells
15, yeah. The thing about it is, though, that it's not like a one side keeps bringing it up. Like, both sides keep bringing it up.
Oh, there are these anti-trans bills targeting trans people in Texas. Like that doesn't sound right. Like what Malcolm proposed is describe these things, like talk about these things. The word genocide doesn't describe those things. It doesn't tell anybody the specifics of what's going on. It doesn't elaborate on the issues that trans people face. It's just, most lay people don't even know what the word genocide means, other than they think of the Holocaust or like the Armenian genocide, right? Which is a systematic slaughter of people. So that word doesn't translate to most people in any meaningful way beyond Holocaust. So why not describe, as Malcolm had elaborated, describe the actual issues? There are 30 anti-trans bills this year in this state right now, all being considered. Why don't we address those? There are anti-trans bathroom laws in Florida. Why don't we address that? Like that's what you can actually talk about are meaningful issues, as opposed to this weird magical word that the vast majority of lay people don't even know the definition of.
Well, so my question is, how do you describe? So you can say these are the bills that are happening, and it's really not great because trans people need access to healthcare, like whatever. Like, how do you describe? Like there's a conclusion, right? Like because
you describe it by what you just said.
Is like, yeah, but like, what does that mean? What is that for? Why are you telling me? What like? It's like if you're pitching this to someone, the like the meat of your essay is here are all these things that are happening. Conclusion paragraph. Like what I want to know is how do you describe in totality the stochastic terrorism plus the anti-trans laws with the suicide rates and the interpersonal violence and stuff like that. Like,
terrorism
how
just doesn't
do you
exist
propose
because,
to describe in totality?
I mean, if you're really going to go and call stochastic terrorism, then you saying stochastic terrorism is also stochastic terrorism, and then it's just a fucking rabbit hole, and it's not useful in any sense. This is Civilization 6. It's from like the Sid Meier's Civilization series.
Totality, that clump of events.
I got you.
Thank you.
Systemic discrimination.
Is that actually communicating the severity of the problem, though? Like what I'm asking is like these are attempts to reduce numbers in the group. That is an eradication attempt.
Does the severity of the problem matter when you're trying to solve it? Is it not just a problem that should be solved along with the systemic discrimination of every other minority in this country?
You're the one talking about getting normies on board, my friend. Like, do you think that normies hear the word systemic oppression and think like, oh, people are dying?
You were asking for an alternative word. I gave you an alternative word. That's pretty much all I can say for that. If I'm talking to normies, I wouldn't be really having this conversation at all. I'd be trying to, get them to see me as a human being for the first place. So
can I? Is it all right if I hop in?
I mean, yeah.
Absolutely.
Probably a good idea.
What do you guys say today?
Flex, just as a proposition, one word that's been used, for example, from a model that was created by social scientist named Michael Mann, he created to describe like atrocities against ethnic groups, though. So his model isn't exactly, obviously one-to-one parallel with trans people. But what he came up with was like there's different types of cleansings that exist and different types of violence that also exist among these. So depending on, for example, the intent you believe that Republicans take towards trans people, one model he came up with was institutional coercion that I think kind of exists currently against trans people. This obviously exists with, kind of the taking away children from families that, for example, they're trying to transition. So if, for example, the goal is to get rid of all trans people, he came up with cultural suppression. With the other one,
Bailey's doing the thing again, bro. My fucking dog is crazy. Okay, there is a light right down here to light up the green screen behind me, and she is just staring into it. What the fuck is wrong with this dog? Oh my god.
The total number or something like this is discrimination, right? These are just like two terms he came. We're trying to categorize types of institutional coercion that existed towards the elimination of a group. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like I think where my issue is, like, I thank you. I appreciate your expertise on this matter. First of all, I appreciate that you did include, at least toward the end there, the word elimination, like, because that's kind of what I guess, like, what my sticking point is on, like, when I'm asking for different terms to describe what's happening.
It's
systemic
not
oppression
elimination.
is not,
that's just simply not
like, I'm looking for a synonym for
is.
genocide that accurately describes the severity of the situation. And so, like, eliminationalist policies, eradication policies.
Systemic discrimination, like, serious enough? Like, I'd say that's pretty serious. Why are we downplaying systemic discrimination in favor of the word genocide?
As Malcolm, who I believe is the only POC who was on this panel, pointed out, like, systemic oppression could refer to touching a black person's hair and also the black person getting shot in the street.
I'm pretty sure.
There is, like, such a huge range of severity that is included in that phrase that it's not specific enough.
Yeah. I don't think that touching a black person's hair in the street is systemic discrimination. That sounds like very individual discrimination. But if you think that you can touch another person without their permission, you have ownership over their body, it is inherently a racist thing to do. Like, it's part of systemic oppression.
She's not saying it's not racist. It's just individual racism instead of systemic racism. Those are two separate things.
Where white people feel like they have ownership over black people's bodies.
What do you think about calling it a crime against humanity?
Pretty sure systemic discrimination requires, like, the system to be oppressing you, not somebody individually in the street touching your hair. Those seem like two different things.
Oh, so you're going to argue from the academic position and not from the materialist position? We're probably just not going to agree on that.
I'm trying to argue from the position of the definition of systemic discrimination, but
I mean, I'm a sociology, like, enthusiast, so to me, like, systemic means, like, you zoom in on the micro and you can zoom out to the macro. So, like,
No. You obviously don't know your own fucking sociology. I don't know if you have a degree on it or if you just study it in your free time. But sociology defines interpersonal, systemic, and it's kind of named differently in every rendition of it, but a sense of everyday racism. So that everyday racism is, and this applies to anything, I'm just going to use racism because it's an easy example. So everyday racism is things like microaggressions, right? Interpersonal racism is someone calling you the N-word or calling you a monkey for being black, right? Something like that. That is interpersonal racism. And systemic racism would be something like you are persecuted for, or you are not given the same opportunities based on your skin color, things like that. So these are all separate concepts and they all exist within sociology and they are all accepted within sociology. You just don't actually know what you're talking about.
Racist interaction is part of systemic discrimination to me. So that just might be a definitional conflict.
And what's the difference between individual and systemic discrimination?
Was that a question of what's the difference?
I'm genuinely curious because I'm learning a little bit about the differences here from a sociology major. If systemic discrimination involves, like, individual, like, interpersonal behavior, then what's the point of having individual versus systemic discrimination?
Systemic, it's kind of like how rectangle and square, like, systemic racism, like, maybe, like, again, this is like maybe an academic definition. Like, I just don't draw distinctions between the things that are happening on the large scale and the things that are happening on the small scale because I can see the ways in which they are inherently connected.
I can understand that, but I think that drawing some distinctions could actually help us find better definitions for what is going on with trans people versus just lumping every bad thing that's ever happened under genocide or something similar, where it's like, even if there's some systemic discrimination happening to trans people, suddenly it's lumped under genocide instead of just refining the definition of systemic discrimination.
I did not say that every bad thing that's ever happened to trans people is part of genocide.
I was trying to correct myself. I apologize for that. That is not the way I meant it to come out. I just mean that, like, I've seen multiple different arguments, and it just for a second my brain farted. My bad about that. But you get my underlying point.
I think that a government making policies that are attempting to create unlivable conditions for a group of people and which results in the death of those people is eliminationalist, it's eradication, it's genocide. Like,
and I think that's happening to multiple different minorities. So
true, you're right.
The difference between those other minorities and this one.
So do you think there's a bunch of active genocide?
I already said there are very specific groups that are being genocided. I really
specific groups meaning like different minorities.
Yes, you asked me this question very specifically at the beginning, and I don't appreciate casting my argument as saying, oh, everybody's getting genocided. No, black people are getting genocided. Native American people are getting genocided. Trans people are getting genocided. It's demonstrable in every case. Like, not every bad action is an attempt to reduce numbers in the group or create unlivable conditions for them so that they remain an oppressed minority permanently, and so that their population never grows beyond a certain point. Like, white people.
I mean, there's nothing being done to reduce the population size of trans people, nor to create unlivable conditions. So based on what is actually happening to trans people, you would have to say that there's an ongoing genocide against literally everyone except maybe white and Asian people in this country, which you are kind of saying, but also saying, oh, I'm not saying that.
People are scared of the quote-unquote white genocide, where like, oh, if we let in too many immigrants and they outbreed us, and if we let the black people succeed and they outbreed us, then they'll do to us what we did to them. Like, yeah, the United States government on official policy is engaged in multiple different targeted attempts to reduce membership. Actually, like, and to be clear, I didn't mention migrants yet, but migrants, removal from families, put in cages, put with white families, 4. I count 4 at minimum active genocides that the United States government is currently engaged in. You asked me to tell you what the difference is. There isn't one.
So
yeah, except
I see
a
problem with this.
What she's missing is that a genocide has the intent to eradicate, right? There's not an intent to eradicate, because eradicate means fucking kill, right? There's not that intent with any of those groups. It's a matter of trying to solve a problem that is practically unsolvable. So that ends up being the result, but it's not the intent, and intent matters, as intent matters with fucking every crime.
To assume that the other 4 people on this panel do not agree with that. So how about, I want us to kind of go around and maybe break that down a little bit. Like, if you agree that there are currently 4 active genocides in the United States, yeah, let's talk about that. Can we start with Power Bottom, and then Zonia, and then Rose, and Johnny?
I think genocide has a very specific definition. I understand that, like, for rhetorical purposes, oftentimes, like, the specific definitions get used a little more loosely. The problem for me is that genocide is a crime, much similar to other crimes that people get accused of sometimes on a more individual basis. I think that it is very important to be correct when you're accusing a country, state, etc., or a person individually of a crime in general. When we use the word genocide in order to describe the discrimination of every minority, I think we're really just watering down the term genocide and making it more difficult to identify actual genocides. I think that the systemic discrimination of black people, indigenous people, trans people,
quite literally what is happening.
I think we should take it seriously. And I've said in my opening statements and throughout this conversation that I think that the systemic discrimination against minorities should be taken extremely seriously. I don't think that we need to emotionally manipulate people by misusing a word or accusing falsely a state or country of a crime in order to get people on our side. That is typically not really worked that great for us. And also, it just waters down the definition and makes it very difficult to actually identify real genocides that are happening. If you want to take it seriously, then get people to stop overusing the word systemic discrimination for everything. Maybe then you'll actually have a chance at getting people to take that seriously, because that used to also be a thing that people took seriously until people overuse that word. That's my opinion on that. Go to the next person.
I mean, yeah.
So I largely agree with PB here. Like, this is the problem with like stretching the definitions of words. It's like, okay, how are you going to get anybody to take this seriously if the whole point is to sort of get alarm out there so people look at it and take it seriously? And then you say, oh, by the way, there's 4 active genocides going in the U.S. People are going to look at you like you're ridiculous. They're not going to believe you.
Yeah, because they grew up in the United States being brainwashed. Sorry.
Academics will look at you like you're being ridiculous. So just keep that in mind. It has nothing to do with growing up in the United States. The world around, people who are actually dealing with genocides outside of the U.S. are going to be what the fuck are these privileged people talking about, right? So you are not winning people over this kind of thing.
Just
you're watering the whole definition down, and you are lowering that threshold of alarm. So people are going to stop taking it seriously. People are going to look at it like this is ridiculous.
So far, at least.
You're crying wolf at this point, right? You're going to become the person who cried wolf, the trans person who cried wolf. So this is completely counterproductive. Now, if you wanted to have sort of like the philosophical discussion in sort of a vacuum with people about, hey, these different things that are going on, do these things fit the definition of genocide? Sure, that's great. You could have that in a vacuum. You could have that incubated conversation. But as soon as you start trying to take it out to the rest of the world and tell other people, by the way, there's 4 active genocides going on in the US, that's not going to make any sense to them, and they're going to think you're kidding. They're not going to take you seriously. So these are okay to kind of spitball with colleagues who will analyze this in a similar kind of way, but it doesn't fit when it steps outside of your little bubble and goes into the general world, the general population. That's where it will fall flat, and that's where you're going to look like an idiot.
I want to, before Rosemary and Johnny Scarlett goes, I want to maybe attempt to steel man the idea that maybe the African-American population in America is currently undergoing a genocide and has been since they landed on our shores in 1619. I think that if you really like look at, I mean, so many laws
going back
from literally all the way back from when they hit our shores. I think that you could use that model theoretically, and if you think that there's currently a trans genocide going, then I think that you would have to assume that there is a genocide against Black people currently.
Yeah, you'd have to assume there's a genocide against literally every race except for whites and
Asians. I wasn't supposed to do that, but like, I would think that there is definitely,
either be consistent or shut up is basically my take on this.
For this entire time. it's the systemic discrimination that's been, that's led to the disparity between white people and African American people in America. It's huge. You can't deny it. So yeah, Johnny Scarlett.
There's a problem. Hold on. There's a problem with this line of questioning, because you're bringing people into a situation where inevitably they're going to say things that people are going to have a pretty serious problem with. You're placing people in that sort of a sticky situation where it's, how they say it. And if they say it incorrectly, if they answer in a way that people aren't happy with or something, that's going to create a bit of a problem. So this kind of gets into very, very treacherous territory of, hey, how bad is the oppression of another minority group that none of us belong to, right? You're asking up for people to risk a lot just to have this conversation. I'll just say outright, I'm not going to have the discussion because I think it gets a little bit too ridiculous debating whether or not some other minority's oppression meets the scale of a genocide. I think that's kind of a fucked up thing to have that discussion in a public setting. I gotta go to the bathroom, by the way.
I mean, it's not really fucked up if you're trying to say that this is what creates a genocide and then another group also has that. You should be able to say, then yes, this group is also experiencing a genocide. But they can't do that because, again, consistency is not something that they know how to do. Simple as that.
So that would take.
Well, I think I would just be curious.
Yeah.
I was just going to say I would be curious to know what definition of genocide you're using when you say that African Americans have been genocided in this country.
The what do you call it? The UN definition.
The UN definition.
Just because and the real kicker for me is intent. Like, I think that there are pretty demonstrable ways that there's been intent with discriminating against African American people in our country. A lot of intent.
This may be a nitpick, and I'm not going to argue on this.
So African American, there's been intent for.
I get your point.
True.
Native American, there's been intent for. Neither actually started as that. So if you're talking about like the old time shit that's happened, I would say no. But if you're talking about like between the founding and the Civil War-ish time, yeah, I mean, you could say that it happened during that time. If you're looking at any time in the last 50 years, no, shut the fuck up.
I do want to just say, I think there are multiple different reasons why somebody could be discriminating against a group of people that do not have to relate to eradicating them from the country. Yeah,
that would be discrimination.
Talking muted, but I'm just saying, it's like, if there's a population that's more likely to vote for a certain demographic, I don't think Republicans are going to want to be voted out of office. That's all I'm saying. Like, it doesn't always have to be just like we want to get rid of the people on this, like, in this country. We're talking about a genocide. If that's been going on ever since Black people came to this country, they've been doing a pretty shit job of getting rid of them because they're still here. Like, what? How many hundreds of years later? So, I don't know. I think that the genocide has to do with eradication of a group or the attempt of it. I know that Germany did not get rid of all the Jews and all that, but they really sure did try, and they killed like 6 million of them. Intentionally to try and get rid of them out of the country. It's not the same thing as exploiting a group of people or trying to move them to certain sections of the state so that they are less likely to be able to vote. No, those are different things. They're still serious. I don't know why we can't just say that multiple things can both have the same amount of seriousness to them.
They are steps in the lead up to eradication, as demonstrated by people who study genocide.
Yes, they can both still be serious.
I'm sorry, the not so bad things that you keep alluding to, like, oh, you're just being discriminated against, like, that's part of the genocide. And the genocide has already started.
And it can also exist without a genocide. They act like these things can only exist with a genocide when that's just extremely inaccurate.
Talk about more solutions and less virtue signaling about how you think it's a fucking genocide. How about you talk more about actual solutions and just instead of just coming on here and telling everybody that we should be calling it a certain word and without offering any way of making it not just
Guys,
past stage
I placed my trash can in the way of where I'd be walking to remind myself that I need to take it out. And as I was walking out to go to the bathroom, I tripped over the damn thing.
The subject of the panel is whether the word genocide is accurate. That's the whole subject of the fucking panel, is whether the word genocide is accurate.
I tripped over the thing and almost fell face first.
Yeah, I want denying to get in here really quick. I'm actually for me personally,
almost sounds like
stuff for memes. Does extermination necessitate genocide?
No.
Okay,
this one you have to be really very careful with. So we're dealing with Statton's 10 stages of genocide, right? The thing is these are supposed to be identifiable.
Does extermination necessitate genocide? If the intent is extermination and the extermination happens, yeah, that would be a genocide. What the fuck?
Categories to try and identify something is genocide. Not all these actually follow a pattern that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 happen in a row, right? There can be genocides, for example, that according to Statton do not include the term. Include, for example,
top left, Johnny. Yeah, but, Johnny has socials.
Also, there's
I'll link him in a bit.
For example, from the list where states
exactly, Lou. The only slight difference might be the intent aspect, but they're practically the same thing.
By the way, what did they say in response to what I said?
And these can record your
Did he withdraw his question?
Your ethnicity, your economic status, your gender. this is a type of classification that can exist that, for example, doesn't
always exactly
malicious intent with it. So you should probably be careful, for example, when even just using statins 10 stages, because either things can exist that are on that list that don't really become genocide,
Here's
or for
Johnny
example,
Socials.
events like the rape of Nanking, where according to the Chinese, around 300,000, like 400,000 of a population of 600,000,
top right,
were killed in a matter of 6 weeks, right? Now,
shut up. I know your chat wants to talk to you, but shut up.
But this is a substantial scale of killing. So extermination itself doesn't automatically mean genocide. Kind of like commentating real quick on like kind of the whole are black people in the past.
I don't remember their socials. I know they definitely follow me on Twitter, and I follow them, but I don't remember what they are.
The situation of trans people is I can't remember the years. I think it was 1953 to be exact. The African American community wrote a pamphlet called "We Charge Genocide," and one of the accusations is really similar to what Lux brought up, which was that the United States was taking policies to try and reduce black birth rate, the black birth rate, basically. And, you know, Lemkin at the time was lobbying also for United States ratification of the Genocide Convention. In fact, a lot of people forget that we didn't ratify it until the 1980s. But when Lemkin was talking about, for example, the experience of black people at the time, Lemkin himself went and wrote letters to the organizers of the pamphlet, letters to the New York Times, to senators, basically saying that, like, the problem with calling this genocide or looking at the aspects that they bring up inside the document is more
how much longer is this going to loop for? I think we're kind of out of the loop, sort of.
Like, not find just, for example, a knowledge-based
understanding. I mean, they're still kind of in the loop.
Suicide rate, or for example, lead to
I'm also just hoping that they get out of said loop. But for now, they are still in it.
He commented on this along with his associates. They said, okay, the goal of this is to put the black person in his place, to quote, rather than say exterminate them in whole or in part. Because when he talked about in part, it meant that you destroy a numerically substantial.
Here is his.
So that's the kind of thing that's worth mentioning.
Twitter.
And he argued that, for example, a lot of the lynchings that happened, a lot of the horrible policies that existed at the time, such as redlining, that to him, it didn't amount to genocide. I mean, this is the guy who coined it. So, I don't know.
Welcome back, Energy.
I really appreciate that history. So, let's have Johnny and Rosemale. Let's, very briefly, if you have... I don't know how much more there is to possibly say on this, but I kind of just want to hit on this for a little bit longer, literally, and then I want to wrap us up in the next 20 minutes, and just try to lead the conversation to something a little bit away from this topic. So, Rose and Johnny.
Back from Adventures to stream. Solid.
First of all, when it comes to the whole race thing, I'm not.
Welcome back to the better stream.
I mean, what? Really relevant, but I don't think there's any genocide happening in the United States, and I just think it's weird to call out, like, saying, like, it's ridiculous to say there's a white genocide when you're saying there's 4 other different genocides to pretty much every other group. I think it's all the same thing. I think a lot of people just like to use the word genocide way too liberally, and I think that's the problem. I think that's a huge issue, right? And I think maybe the issue isn't even the wording anymore.
It's
I
up to
him. It's just
overstating
the severity of the situation. I mean, I heard Lux state a couple times, like, dying.
Sounds like he does not want to debate me, but that's on him.
True, and this is actually happening. There's a bunch of people dying right now. That would be a terrible thing, and I would be totally like, we need to do everything we can to stop this. I just don't see it right now, so I'm just confused as to where you're getting this conclusion from.
Yeah, I think a large part of this, as denying put it, is intent. Intent to keep children from transitioning, or intent to stop trans healthcare from being as liberally administered as we would like it to be, doesn't have the intent of making trans people suicidal. It is largely from the fear of parents that there's...
Exactly. It has the intent to protect. It may be misguided, but it still has the intent to protect, which is what is really key here.
Children will become transgender. I accept that. However, adults are still allowed to do basically whatever they want in this country. And I personally am also not of the opinion that we should be discussing the issues of other subgroups in this particular panel. I think that that's not our place. This is
anyone can talk about anything. Shut up.
Issue. And Lux, I think that you've put forward a lot of really great evidence for systemic oppression, systemic suppression, and perhaps even the eliminationist policies of a lot of extremists in this country. However, this has always been a discussion of not necessarily the definition of the word, but of the usage and how it is useful. So I'm still firmly on the camp that this is not a useful term in order to get people on our side. However, I can't deny what Lux has put forward. I just don't think that it's something that I would personally use in my own advocacy.
Okay, so this is a question.
You can deny it. It's pretty fucking easy to deny it because it's not accurate.
To the extent we choose to use the term genocide in discourse, do you think that it's important to, 1, identify the agents of the genocide, and 2, describe the amount of power they actually have to carry out their intentions?
That's a really interesting question. Yeah, no, I do think that that's fairly important. And I think that it's even something that I've already witnessed happening. I've already seen people, like, you know, posting personal information of transphobic politicians, which may or may not be TOS. I can't really speak to that. Like, so I've kind of already seen that happening where we're identifying like this person in specific has done XYZ, and that's a problem. Like protesting outside their house is about the extent to which I will like propose that we should do something about that. Like if you like, again, like bothering them in the diner, if you catch them in public, like, yeah, make their life hell as much as you can, like within the limits of free speech and everything. Like, I do think that could potentially be useful. Like, I don't know what you're planning on doing with that information. It's like, I must ask you the same question, Chatter, as I would ask the state of Texas about why did you want a list of trans people who've changed their gender in the last 2 years? But yeah, I mean, I think that identifying those specific individuals, if for nothing else, then like you can then create a campaign
there's something
around.
to be said for why do you want that list, but at the same time, that list alone means nothing.
Oh, I don't want this person to get reelected. Let's focus our attention on this district where they could get ousted by a Democrat or something along those lines. Like, yeah, so long as the system is there, I think that those are things that you could be doing.
Okay, I think that kind of answers some of the follow-up questions to maybe what other people were trying to ask you too. Does anyone else want to tackle the question before I move on to less genocide-related question?
Ask me the question again.
Absolutely. For everybody on the panel now, to the extent we choose to use the term genocide in discourse, do you all think it's important to, 1, identify the agents of the genocide, and 2, describe the amount of power that they actually have to carry out their intentions?
Absolutely. Yeah. This is that's part of the idea of a genocide, is that you would have a concerted effort on the part of a group or groups. And identifying those groups is probably the first step in that.
Yeah, I would say there's not really a point in really calling out a genocide if you're not ready to.
Yeah, I mean, but assuming you're calling out a genocide, the WHO is doing it. Seems like it's pretty exposed already, I guess you could say. Maybe I'm wrong there, but at least from what they're talking about, it seems like that's already a pretty exposed concept.
To also then identify those who are enacting the genocide and the power that they have to actualize it. So I would say that if you're ready to use the word genocide, it should be important to you to want to identify the culprits and the power that they hold.
Yes.
Okay, give me
yes, Zonia.
See if Salem wants to come in.
Zonia again with the never fucking missing. Well, okay, she misses a lot, but in this panel, the never missing.
I'm going to ask a less genocide related question. So, what does it mean for trans people to lead the discussion on trans issues? And we are going to start with Power Bottom Politics.
Did I hear my name?
Yes, I'm sorry. Are you lagging like crazy? What?
No, my bad. I put it in the chat. I had to run off for a second. My bad. If you don't mind just repeating the question that you mentioned, I had to talk to my father-in-law for a moment.
No problem, of course. What is it? This is like a question, for all of us cis people out here. I'm legitimately trying to, like figure out how to, be better at handling this kind of discussion and these types of issues. So that's kind of more where I'm coming from with these questions. Legitimately trying to.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm ignoring chat, guys.
So what does it mean for trans people to lead the discussion on trans issues?
There's been a back channel discussion that's going on, and DMs has been involved.
People are always going to be more vocal about the issues that affect them the most. So trans people are probably most likely going to be more vocal about their own issues. I'm not going to lie, when I read that question, when you sent it to me, I was a little bit confused what you meant by that. I'm kind of guessing you just meant like what would it look like for trans people to advocate for themselves, or am I getting that wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's kind of this phrase that goes around, that's sort of like trans people should be leading the discussion on trans issues. Black people should be leading the discussion on black issues. I'll admit, as a cis white male, there aren't too many issues that cis white males are the only people that can lead the discussion on, right?
You could lead the discussion on the white genocide.
It's okay. Well, one day
I guess that doesn't seem.
Yeah, the white genocide.
One day I too will pass as cis white male, and,
I mean, I don't
nobody will be able to argue
any one person or group should be leading the discussion over another, unless we're talking about something that requires actual credentials, like
especially like you, what you've been doing with this panel,
being a doctor or being an engineer or something like that, or being a lawyer.
And empathetic. I think that's like really important. I always want, it sounds silly to say, but I always want more cis people or more people who are not trans advocating for trans issues. Hopefully it should always be done well. If you don't have the confidence to advocate for the positions, you should probably like hold off, or at least acknowledge that you may not know everything, just so that you don't spread misinformation or misrepresent somebody. But I think it's
glitching again.
Lagging. More people who advocate for trans issues, more positive impact they will have on society as a whole.
Hey, you're gonna debate me on why the Earth is flat?
You lagged out there at the end, but I think we understood what you meant in spirit.
Okay. Let's fucking do it. Hop in. No, Techie, do it. I'm in. Techie pulls this joke quite a bit, and I'm gonna try to make him stick to it. But honestly, you never actually know when Decky's joking and when he's not. He's joking that he's a flat earther. He's not actually a flat earther. But he also wanted me to debate a vegan, and then he wanted me to debate someone on flat earth. It's not like, man, join the waiting room. That's what you have to join. And then I pull you into the stream, VC. I don't trust you, motherfuckers. I had too many people that I didn't fucking check. Nah, I'm a flat earther. Something tells me that you're not. Why did my voice just start peaking out of nowhere? What the hell? Alright, guys, are we ready? Are we ready for the techie flat earth debate? Let's do it. I'm gonna pull him in. Alright, sir. Why are you a flat earther? Unmute yourself. He's muted. He's fucking muted.
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. So yeah, the Earth is flat.
And what makes you think that?
Give me a moment to pull up some sources.
All right, I'll pull up sources as well if we're playing this game.
Gonna give me 1 second. Oh my freaking God! So many freaking brainwashed people fighting flat Earth theory, flat Earthers. Why they're wrong? How to debate a flat Earther? Dear God!
I wonder why. Crazy concept. That maybe they're right. Here, I can start you off with a question, all right? And because we can just talk through this part.
Okay.
So,
okay, hit me.
The Earth is flat in your view, correct?
Yes.
So why, if me in Washington State, I can head directly west and hit like China or Japan or something, one of the Asian countries? Why can I do that?
So you're saying you can go. So you're saying you can go straight and hit somewhere. Hold on, repeat that. So you're saying you can go straight?
Me in Washington State, I can go west. I can go on a boat and I can go west. And I will hit Asia. Why?
So you're saying, okay, so is it possible, like, is it possible you can go east and still hit Asia?
Yes. Much longer trip, but yes.
Is there any evidence that that is possible?
People doing it. People circumnavigating the globe also. That has happened.
No, I mean like actual evidence, not like, someone just saying they did it. You know what I mean?
I mean, people have been tracked doing it. You can also see that they connect in pictures from space. Bailey, why are you whining?
No. All the space pictures are edited.
They're all edited. Do you have any evidence for that? Edited. Okay, no, actually, you're correct. They are all edited. They are almost all composites, because of just quality and the amount of the size of pictures and stuff. But they're not edited to change what is seen. They're edited to show what is seen.
We're kind of like going off here. Okay, so what rationality do you have that when you go to somewhere that is essentially on the underside of the planet, that everything isn't, upside down, whereas it would 100% be the case if we were to, be on a giant object like, 100 times our body, we'd still be upside down if we were to stand on it from that perspective.
Okay, wait. What flat Earth theory are you subscribing to? Is it like a saucer that we can get onto both sides of?
No, it is it is that we are on a flat surface, and there is a firmament above. It's like a snow globe.
So we live in a snow globe.
Yes. And we can essentially get anywhere, even if we do, even in kind of like a circle, because we could just curve around. We could just curve around.
Well, that circle, you would end up getting closer to other places that you just simply don't get closer to. When, like, if I was to go west, directly west, and I hit Asia. Okay.
Yeah.
If I were to be going in a circle, then I would have to be getting close to what, Alaska, maybe Europe. Maybe I go the other way and get close to Argentina, South Africa.
No, what would happen is when you head that way, you'd hit the essentially an ice wall, and you'd be forced to detour and curve around the ice wall until you get back on the path that leads you to.
So is there any evidence of this ice wall existing?
No one's ever been there. You kind of just have to keep going. But no one's actually ever been there.
But you're saying that we hit the ice wall and take a detour, but no one's ever been there?
No, not like literally. It's more like they just see. It's more like they just detect, a large ice wall.
They detect a large ice wall.
I don't know how they do it, but like before they reach it, they'd like, oh, we can't go any further. And then they just detour before they actually reach the ice wall.
What allows them to detect this ice wall?
Sonar.
So what about all of the explorers prior to all of this technology where there is no recorded history of an ice wall?
Hold on, give me a second.
You gotta go look up more shit, guys.
Shut up.
Can't even hold his own point.
Hold on. I think I might have found something.
He says he found something. I don't think he found shit, guys. I'm purposefully not muting myself in the Discord at this point. You got anything? You got any halfway decent points?
Oh, it says the Columbus journey was a lie. Ooh.
The Columbus journey was a lie?
Looks like you're in the corner now. Yeah, it's a lie. It didn't happen. Well, not that it didn't happen. It's just.
So how did we get to North America?
Huh?
How did we get to North America?
I'm still reading. It just said it didn't happen. I didn't get that far.
Something tells me it's not going to have a solid answer.
Bunch of pillaging. No, where's the fucking? No, where's this? Oh, Columbus said. Wait, what did Columbus fucking say? It says Columbus said on his journey that an ice wall is in the way. Oh, that's documented.
Let me see if that's actually documented. Did Columbus come across an ice wall on the way to the Americas?
Oh, wait, hold on. No, this is a fanfic chapter.
You're reading a fanfic to
Shut up.
To talk about why the Earth is flat?
I didn't think it was a fanfic. Yeah, it's a fanfic on Quotive. I thought Christopher Columbus was talking weird. He was talking like a millennial. Give me a second. I gotta find something else. Too many brainwash. Google is brainwashed. It's nothing but articles of why we're wrong.
So if there's nothing on why you're right, why do you think that you're right?
Essentially, like, okay, so have you ever heard of the ruler on the plane experiment?
The what? Repeat that.
Have you heard? Have you heard of the ruler on the plane experiment?
I have not.
Hold on, let me see if I can find it. Give me a second. Someone find it here. Maybe I can go on YouTube. Hold on. Maybe it's on YouTube.
Is it this like center of gravity test?
It's essentially judging. Hold on.
Can you describe what it is? Because I can probably find it faster than you, dude.
Okay. It's the video called.
I'm not watching the video.
Okay. I guess I'd have to read the transcripts then.
Do you know what the test is?
Yes, you take a ruler on. You take a ruler on. Yes. You use. I'm trying to read the about. See if it's in there because I can't watch the video to know what the device is called.
Is it a ruler?
It's called a spirit level.
A spirit level. Okay, yes. What does it do?
He explains it in the video. It's not in the about.
Okay, so you're arguing a point you don't even know. Can we go to a point that you know or that you can read while you talk?
Let me hold on. I can look up what the spirit level is. Yeah, spirit level ruler. It is.
Oh, it's the level. Yeah, it's the thing for making sure things are flat when you're building stuff. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. What's your point with this?
You take that on the plane, and you write the flight, and make sure it's a long flight. And if it stays even, that means you didn't come across any curves, like the curvature of.
Incorrect, because you stay equal. You stay parallel to the curvature of the Earth.
How do you stay parallel with something curved? It's curved.
How do you go around a roundabout in your car?
A what?
A roundabout, like a road roundabout.
You mean like driving in a circle?
Yeah. So you can drive in a circle. It's the same idea, where it's just how much upwards and downwards angle you have
but that's
while you're in the plane.
That's driving in a circle on a flat surface. We're talking about a globe here.
No, so again, first of all, the curvature is not a ton because again, the Earth is huge. But even on a long flight, right? As you drive, you're not going straight and leaving the Earth. You're staying equal to the curvature of the Earth, because if the plane gets too high, you're fucked, and if the plane gets too low, you're fucked. So you have to stay equal to the curvature of the Earth. You stay at what is it, like 30,000 feet or something?
Wait, so you're saying a plane can fly over the curve of the Earth?
I mean, anything moving is kind of going over the curve of the Earth. It's just a matter of how much, right? So the longer you fly, the more curve you're covering, right? But you can drive and technically be going over the curve, but like it's not in any way that is noticeable because of the fact that the curve is so.
What?
It's not super curved, right? So you walking 10 feet, you're not going to feel the curve. Technically, there's a curve there, but you walking 100 miles, you will actually be covering some of that curve.
So I should be taller if I stand in one place and then walk 100 feet in another direction, and I'm, let's say, shorter than I am standing where I was standing. That would mean that the curve is there and it is a globe.
It's not in any way noticeable at that distance.
You just said I'd be going over the curve.
Yeah, I mean, technically, like I said, it would be nowhere near something that is noticeable, but technically you are.
Okay, well, how far would it be noticeable?
A very long ways, probably like across the United States, you might be able to notice it.
Okay, so if we like measure the distance from where I am to where I would be in, like, I don't know, 100,000 miles or whatever, and I'm shorter from where I'm standing to the place where I was going, that means, the curvature is there.
You would also be shorter going the other way. It's not a matter of your height. Your height is always the same off the ground also.
That doesn't make sense. If I'm in the curve, then I should be shorter.
You're always in the curve.
Not physically, like bodily shorter. I mean, like my standing position.
You're always in the curve though, so you're always shorter.
So what? So wouldn't I just be even height no matter where I'm standing?
Yeah, but it depends on what your starting point is though. So theoretically, let's say that we're gonna say the top of the globe is Seattle, Washington, because I'm from Seattle and everything revolves around us. So let's say that the top of the earth is Seattle, Washington. If you go down to Australia, I mean, yeah, you'll be shorter because Seattle, Washington is considered the top of the earth. But there is no actual top because it's a sphere. You can't have a top point.
Hold on, you just said you can't have a top point on a sphere? Wait, yes. On a sphere?
You can't have a distinguishable top point. Any part of it could be the top.
Do you have any evidence of that?
That you can't have a top of a sphere?
Yeah.
Look at a soccer ball. Where's the top? Look at a soccer ball.
It'd be adjacent. You'd have to put the logo upright or however the logo.
A plain white soccer ball. Where's the top?
What is a plain? All soccer balls are like white and black. Hold on.
Not all soccer balls are white and black, but I've seen soccer balls that are just plain white. Where's the top?
No logo?
Bailey, shut up. Please, I love you. Yeah, no logo.
The top would be whichever side is the northern or southern hemisphere. Well, the northern and southern hemisphere of the ball.
How would you identify that?
By holding it upright.
And then what if you just spin it a little bit? Then the northern hemisphere is completely different.
Not technically, no, because you can tell by the angle and shape of the
You're being purposefully obtuse here.
No, it's a pentagon. It's not an obtuse. Wait, hold on. No, it's not a pentagon.
You are being obtuse.
What's a six-sided? No, what's a five-sided shape? I think that's a pentagon.
It's a pentagon, but you sir are obtuse.
You're